Chapter 1915 Dumbstruck. Rumble. The formation shook and there was a huge opening right in front of the experts from Supreme 10 Alliance. The experts from Supreme 10 Alliance passed through the opening and entered the galaxy as they wished. I hope that Lineage of Star could hold on a little longer so we can make it in time. Don't worry. It hasn't been long. Lineage of Star shouldn't have been wiped out entirely yet. We definitely stand a chance to attack. Hehe, I can't wait. The experts from Supreme 10 Alliance were chatting casually as they plunged inside the galaxy. Very soon they arrived at the core region of the galaxy formation, the battlefield. The moment they arrived at the battlefield, they saw the battlefield in front of them. Everyone who had been chatting leisurely immediately grew shocked. The war was ongoing before them. However, the war looked extremely tragic. It was one-sided. It was definitely a one-sided war. Even the word war couldn't describe the situation. It should be called a massacre instead. Looking at the large number of Dao soldiers, along with the experts from Lineage of Star, they constantly swarmed in and besieged the people who were hemmed in. There were continuous murders and the experts from Star Extermination Alliance who were hemmed in were constantly killed. Their numbers were decreasing. By then there was less than 20 people. Even of those who were alive, they were mostly severely injured. How could it be? Am I dreaming? Shouldn't Lineage of Star be the one who is completely suppressed and massacred, to the point where there is no space to counterattack? How could the situation be the total opposite? Star Extermination Alliance was massacred by Lineage of Star. Dumbstruck. Everyone looked at the battlefield and they were dumbstruck. They had never expected the war to be in such a state. Previously they hadn't worried about Lineage of Star at all. However, with the situation of the war then, Star Extermination Alliance was obviously defeated and massacred. Supreme 10 Alliance, the people from Supreme 10 Alliance are here. On the battlefield, the remaining experts from Star Extermination Alliance were thrilled with the arrival of Supreme 10 Alliance. There were even people who immediately shouted, "Supreme 10 Alliance, hurry up and attack. Wipe out Lineage of Star with us. Hurry up. Otherwise, if Star Extermination Alliance were to be wiped out, Supreme 10 Alliance alone wouldn't be able to do anything about Lineage of Star. Hurry up and help." There were shrill screams along with some roars that reverberated on the battlefield. The experts from Supreme 10 Alliance exchanged a look. What do we do? There were gazes that fixed upon the Master of Emperor Sword Sect and Emperor God Wu Yao, the two peak Emperor gods. On the way in, they had been thinking about how to destroy Lineage of Star. When they arrived in the galaxy and saw the sight, it was entirely different from what they had imagined. Hence, their original plan naturally wouldn't work. The Master of Emperor Sword Sect had a cold look. They are right. If Star Extermination Alliance were to be wiped out, Supreme 10 Alliance alone wouldn't be able to do anything to Lineage of Star. Seize the time when Star Extermination Alliance still has some power and Lineage of Star just went through a war. Let's attack immediately. This is our only chance. Emperor God Wu Yao nodded heavily. There was a low roar, then the Master of Emperor Sword Sect and Emperor God Wu Yao took the lead to attack first. The experts from Supreme 10 Alliance saw and they didn't hesitate and plunged out to kill too. Supreme 10 Alliance joined the war. Great. Jian Wushuang wasn't angry at the sight but he smiled. Everyone go all out and wipe out Supreme 10 Alliance as well. Jian Wushuang's voice reverberated in the void on the battlefield. The guest elders of Lineage of Star heard and they couldn't help but roar. There was excitement and passion burning in their eyes. Before they fought with Star Extermination Alliance, they were anxious and worried that they couldn't match evenly with Star Extermination Alliance. But who could have known that Star Extermination Alliance had had the lower hand since the very beginning of the war? In the end, they were even being massacred. The guest elders felt reassured and it gave a boost to their morale and kept them on an unprecedented high. Then, even though Supreme 10 Alliance had arrived, they showed no fear. Plus, Lineage of Star still had strong fighting power. They could totally be fearless to fight against Supreme 10 Alliance. Die. Kill all of them. It's been a while since I have such a hearty massacre. There were earth-shattering roars resounding in the air. The experts and Dao soldiers from Lineage of Star immediately fought with the people from Supreme 10 Alliance. Among the crowd, Jian Wushuang. There was a sudden angry bellow. Jian Wushuang turned to look at the source of the voice. Just as he saw the person who let out the angry roar, the corner of his lips lifted into a cold smirk. I see. It's the Master of Emperor Sword Sect. I saw through you long ago, Master of Emperor Sword Sect. You harbor a deep-seated grudge. Once Lineage of Star is in danger, you definitely will attack Lineage of Star without hesitation. From what it seems, I'm right. If you had wiped out Emperor Sword Sect back then, you wouldn't have this scene now. The master of Emperor Sword Sect humphed, "Today will be the day we of Emperor Sword Sect wash away our humiliation." "Is that so? We shall see if you are capable enough." Jian Wushuang sneered and moved his willpower. The 4 Hongjun golden swords burst out at the master of Emperor Sword Sect like lightning. At the same time, Jian Wushuang took a huge stride forward. His 14 arms wielded a sword each, and sword intention swept across and pressed at the master of Emperor Sword Sect. The master of Emperor Sword Sect knew that Jian Wushuang was powerful and didn't dare to act recklessly. He immediately gave full play to his swordsmanship to withstand Jian Wushuang's attack. Da, 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 da. There were a few ferocious clashes. Merely a few clashes, and in a short time, the master of Emperor Sword Sect fell back from Jian Wushuang's attack and he seemed to be in a fix. "Jian Wushuang is really strong," the master of Emperor Sword Sect muttered. "Master of Emperor Sword Sect." There was a voice, and Palace Master Wu Luo appeared next to him. "Jian Wushuang's power is far beyond us. Earlier, number 1 Diving King, the master of real martial art Divine Church, and I teamed up, but we were suppressed by him. It'd be impossible if you want to match evenly with him alone. Only if you and I and Emperor God Wu Yao team up can we fight against him." Palace Master Wu Luo's voice was soft. If one took a closer look, they could see that Palace Master Wu Luo's face was pale and there was a blood stain at the corner of his lips. It was obvious that he was forced into a miserable situation when he fought with Jian Wushuang alone. If it wasn't for Supreme 10 Alliance's arrival, he might have been killed by Jian Wushuang. Chapter 1916. 3 alliances are all here. 3 peak Emperor gods teamed up and you could only match evenly with him? The master of Emperor Sword Sect was shocked and his expression grew unusually solemn. Emperor God Wu Yao also appeared next to the master of Emperor Sword Sect. "Emperor God Wu Yao, the 3 of us teamed up to fight with Jian Wushuang," the master of Emperor Sword Sect said. "All right," Emperor God Wu Yao nodded heavily. Suddenly, the 3 peak Emperor gods instantly took action. 3 against 1 again? "Ah, come on then," Jian Wushuang was fearless. In an instant, Jian Wushuang got closer to the 3 peak Emperor gods. The experts from Supreme 10 Alliance and Star Extermination Alliance gathered and fought with the experts from Lineage of Star fiercely. Both parties were in a fierce fight. In a short time, it would be unrealistic to call victory or defeat. However, just as both parties were fighting fiercely, there was a terrifying explosion from afar. The entire universe galaxy was shaking vigorously. It was trembling in balance. *T. Hall Master Yuan, who was hiding in the depths of the galaxy, suddenly grew solemn and he instantly sent Jian Wushuang a message about what he saw on the outside of the galaxy. "Palace Master, Almighty's Alliance is attacking too." Hall Master Yuan sounded anxious. "Almighty's Alliance?" Jian Wushuang's eyes dilated. Among the 3 alliances who eyed Lineage of Star, the strongest was Almighty's Alliance. However, Almighty's Alliance and Lineage of Star shared no resentment. They were merely coming after the secret skill of Star Palace. Hence, they weren't harboring strong murderous intentions against Lineage of Star. Previously, Emperor God Xiao Luo visited with his consciousness embodiment and declared their terms and condition with Lineage of Star, but Lineage of Star never replied. In actual fact, Lineage of Star had made a decision long ago. The reason why they didn't reply was merely to steady the Almighties. Alliance didn't manage to hold back but started to attack at such a crucial moment. "We are almost done with Star Extermination Alliance. In addition to Supreme 10 Alliance, Lineage of Star could deal with them. Plus, we have the support of the formation. We have at least a 60% chance of winning. However, if Almighty's Alliance were to join in..." Jian Wushuang's face grew grave. The experts from the 2 alliances felt the surrounding galaxy quiver. They could guess the reason of the quiver. "It's Almighty's Alliance." Almighty's Alliance took action. Almighty's Alliance finally couldn't hold back anymore. "Lineage of Star is too powerful. Even if our 2 alliances team up, we might not stand an absolute chance to win. However, although Almighty's Alliance doesn't hold a grudge against Lineage Go Star, they are here for the secret skill of Star Palace after all. To get the secret skill, they have to stand by our side. Hurry up, let's attack the formation as well to work together with Almighty's Alliance so that they can enter." The 2 alliances immediately made a decision. Very soon, the experts from both campsites attacked the galaxy formation. *T. Hall Master Yuan's face was cold. With Almighty's Alliance attacking outside, there is already great pressure. Now that the experts from both alliances are attacking from the inside, the galaxy has yet to recover from major damage after all. Palace Master, I can't hold on any longer. On the battlefield, Jian Wushuang, who was fighting with the three peak Emperor gods, received Hall Master Yuan's message and his face grew solemn. He knew that Hall Master Yuan had already done his best. As you can't hold back, let the experts from Almighty's alliance come in, Jian Wushuang said coldly. Let them come in? Hall Master Yuan stunned, and there was another terrifying hit on the galaxy formation before he could react. There was a really huge opening on the vast galaxy formation. The experts from Almighty's alliance immediately swarmed in. With their traveling speed, they arrived at the border of the battlefield in a really short period of time. The experts from Alimgi's alliance were also shocked when they saw the situation of the battlefield in front of them. Especially when they saw Emperor God Tianling and Jian Yi fighting in one of the corners of the battlefield. The two terrifying fighting powers swept out wantonly in the galaxy. The power that was displayed could even strike fear into a peak Emperor God. There was no one who dared to get close within a 100 million mile range of the battle between the two. Star Extermination Alliance, Supreme 10 Alliance has already attacked and they are only evenly matched with Lineage of Star? Lineage of Star is terrifyingly powerful. There were many experts from Almighty's alliance who were exclaiming in surprise. Just then, Hall Master Yuan, send me to the experts from Almighty's alliance, Jian Wushuang commanded. Yes, Hall Master Yuan nodded. There was immediately a space wormhole that appeared from nowhere behind Jian Wushuang. He immediately gave up the fight with the three peak Emperor gods in front of him and leapt into the space wormhole. There was a flash of light, and when it reappeared, Jian Wushuang had already come before the experts from Almighty's alliance. As the strongest alliance among all three alliances, the experts from Almighty's alliance were gloating in the galaxy but had yet to join the war. The Almighties were looking at the figure that had suddenly substantiated in front of them. The figure was naturally Jian Wushuang. Lineage of Star has so many Dao soldiers and you have fighting power that isn't second to any alliances, but you have been showing the white feather. Even when Star Extermination Alliance stood outside the galaxy to humiliate you verbally, you didn't respond at all. Only now you finally took action for real. Sword Emperor, you are really wise in fighting. Emperor God Xiao Luo from Almighty's alliance spoke with a low voice, but it spread out in the universe. This time, if we Almighty's alliance were to be any slower, I'm afraid Star Extermination Alliance and Supreme 10 Alliance would have been wiped out at Lineage of Star's hands, right? Since Star Extermination Alliance and Supreme 10 Alliance came to wipe out Lineage of Star, we naturally won't hold back. If there's an opportunity, we of course would like to wipe out the two alliances. On the contrary, Almighty's alliance shares no resentment with Lineage of Star. I wonder if everyone could consider Lineage of Star, leave and not get involved in this. When this is resolved, Lineage of Star will definitely express their heartfelt gratitude with abundant gifts, Jian Wushuang said humbly. You want us to just leave? Palace Master Xiao Luo sneered. Sword Emperor, I brought up the terms and conditions with you before. As long as Lineage of Star is willing to hand out the inheritance of the secret skill of Star Palace, we of Almighty's alliance naturally will back off and not interfere with Lineage of Star at all. As for the existence of the other two alliances, it has nothing to do with us. Alright, I can promise to let all of you receive the inheritance of the secret skill of Star Palace, but I'd like to have all of you leave for now, Jian Wushuang said coldly. Hearing what Jian Wushuang had said, the experts from Almighty's alliance were surprised. Chapter 1917 Fighting Alone. Agreed? Jian Wushuang had agreed to pass them the inheritance of the secret skill of Star Palace? But the question was whether he really agreed or was he just putting them off. Sword Emperor, merely a verbal agreement, it's useless. You could totally change your mind after this, Emperor God Xiao Luo said in a low voice. By then you will have already taken care of the two alliances. Against Almighty's alliance alone, Lineage of Star could totally be fearless. We of Almighty's alliance could do nothing about you. So what do you want? Jian Wushuang's eyes were cold. Very simple. I want you to pass us the inheritance of the secret skill of Star Palace now. Before this, I will ask Star Extermination Alliance and Supreme 10 Alliance to stop. Until you pass us the secret skill of Star Palace and we left, you can continue to fight. What do you think? Emperor God Xiao Luo said. That's a great idea, but it's a pity that Almighty's alliance thought it too well. Jian Wushuang smirked and lifted his head to look at the expert of the Almighty's alliance. His gaze was extremely cold. In his hand, Blood Mountain sword quivered and the blade shot at Almighty's alliance directly. Listen, either Almighty's alliance leave now or stay back entirely. The cold voice was heard from Jian Wushuang and it resounded through the entire galaxy. Listening to what Jian Wushuang said, Even the experts from Star Extermination Alliance and Supreme 10 Alliance had their eyes wide open and looked at Jian Wushuang in shock. What is he trying to do? If Almighty's alliance doesn't leave, he will make Almighty's alliance stay back entirely? Where did his courage come from? Almighty's alliance is the strongest among the 3 alliances. The number of Almighties are more than 100 of them. Jian Wushuang is courting death. Almighty's alliance, over 100 Almighties, their faces grew cold after hearing what Jian Wushuang said. Jian Wushuang, aren't you too courageous? Emperor God Xiao Luo grew grave. Emperor God Xiao Luo, as he is courting death, let's fulfill his death wish. Let's attack. There was an Emperor God who said that next to him. Yes, with the almightiest power, in collaboration with Star Extermination Alliance and Supreme 10 Alliance, we can totally wipe out lineage of Star. By then, the secret skill of Star Palace will still be ours. Let's attack. The experts from Almighty's alliance complimented. There was a flash of decisiveness in Emperor God Xiao Luo's eyes too. He had already made up his mind. It's absolutely impossible for us to just leave like this. Emperor God Xiao Luo's loud and bright voice resounded across the battlefield. This is your decision? Jian Wushuang's face was cold as he glared at the experts from Almighty's alliance. If so, don't blame me. The people from Almighty's alliance have to die today. All have to die. The remark instantly stirred an unprecedented commotion in the entire galaxy. Everyone heard and they were terrified. They couldn't understand how was Jian Wushuang courageous enough to make such a remark in a situation like that. Would Lineage of Star still have any other impressive trump card? Just as everyone was confused, Jian Wushuang took a step forward slowly and walked in front of Almighty's alliance. What is he trying to do? No one knew what was happening when they saw the scene. It seems that he wants to match evenly with the entire Almighty's alliance with his power alone? Is he joking? Fighting alone? Idiot. He thinks he is a great emperor? Or he thinks he was master of Star Palace back then? Everyone was exclaiming in surprise. However, Jian Wushuang didn't stop his footsteps but got closer to Almighty's alliance gradually. Almighty's alliance had a total of more than 100 Almighties. There were over 100 pairs of eyes that watched Jian Wushuang's arrival. Although he did come alone, he struck fear into the Almighties when he walked to them with billowing aura. They even got their alert up subconsciously. Would Jian Wushuang really have any other trump card? Emperor God Xiao Luo started thinking about the possibility as well. Just then Jian Wushuang stopped moving. About 10,000 miles away from the experts from Almighty's alliance, Jian Wushuang stopped in the void. His eyes were cold without any emotion and he glanced at the experts from Almighty's alliance. He clenched Blood Mountain sword tight in his hands and the sword was quivering vigorously. Rumble. A terrifying sword intention swept out. The sword intention was supreme. It was like the reigning emperor of heaven and earth. Every living thing before it had to yield. That was the sword intention that an emperor, a monarch possessed. Jian Wushuang then was like the highest ruler in the universe. The entire heaven and earth, the entire universe, all living things should yield to him. The sword intention was too supernatural. This is... The master of Emperor Sword Sect from Supreme 10 Alliance stared at Jian Wushuang with his eyes wide opened. To be exact, he was staring at the sword intention that was soaring from Jian Wushuang's body. As the master of Emperor Sword Sect, he was naturally familiar with the sword intention of the Supreme Emperor. At the same time, he also realized the sword principle that Jian Wushuang was going to perform. Emperor Sword Principle. This is Emperor Sword Sect's strongest Emperor Sword Principle. The asterisk M in it. As expected, Jian Wushuang has comprehended Emperor Sword Principle and he already mastered it and is able to perform it. The master of Emperor Sword Sect roared. Emperor Sword Principle? The experts on the scene were surprised. Legend said that Emperor Sword Sect's Emperor Sword Principle was from one of the superb experts from the First Era, Sword Emperor Dugu. Sword Emperor Dugu seemed to have gotten the Sword Principle from ancient times too. Because of the Sword Principle, Sword Emperor Dugu was able to remain in the top 3 among the experts in the First Era. The power of the Sword Principle was extraordinary. However, it was obviously impossible to match evenly with over 100 Sir Gods and Emperor Gods from Almighty's alliance with merely Emperor Sword Principle alone. Jian Wushuang's face was cold and Blood Mountain sword was raised high. Just like an emperor who raised the sword of emperor. Once it slashed, there would be thousands of heads being chopped. There was a terrifying imposing sword aura that concentrated in the universe. Just as the sword aura was going to be activated, there was boundless power of star that instantly swept out from Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang's strongest trump card, the 3rd volume of the secret skill of Star Palace was triggered. Jian Wushuang's bloodshot eyes revealed boundless murderous intention. All of you share no resentment with lineage of Star. But too bad you're too greedy. You shouldn't have cast greedy eyes over the secret skill of Star Palace, nor should you have cornered lineage of Star. Now for lineage of Star, all of you have to die. Chapter 1918 The Power of One Stroke. All of you, die. What Jian Wushuang said shook heaven and earth like sacred lightning from the highest heaven. His voice reverberated in everyone's ears. Whoever heard him revealed a terrified expression and they were roaring in their hearts. After Jian Wushuang said that, he raised the emperor's sword high in the sky and suddenly slashed. Guang. There was a terrifying sword light that was instantly magnified and engulfed tens of thousands of miles. The sword light was shimmering in gold and extremely eye-catching. The experts from Almighty's Alliance were engulfed in the sword light then. At the same time, the experts from Almighty's Alliance suddenly showed an unprecedented fear across their faces. Terrified. Yes, they were terrified. Previously, they didn't care much about sword principle that Jian Wushuang performed. They thought no matter how strong Jian Wushuang's Emperor Sword principle was, it wouldn't be able to shake more than 100 Almighties. However, then, when the sword light swung out, they could feel the power of the stroke at the first instance. Emperor Sword principle was the strongest sword principle from ancient times. Although the sword principle was only the first move, its power was still earth-shattering. With Jian Wushuang power, although the power of the stroke that was performed with his all couldn't be compared to a great emperor's, it was extremely close to one. At least, Emperor God Tianling's full force hit wouldn't be comparable to a sword principle of such power. The sword principle wasn't the most crucial part. The most crucial part was when Jian Wushuang performed the sword principle, he cast the secret skill of Star Palace as well. The third volume of Secret Skill of Star Palace, his strongest trump card, would instantly increase the power of the stroke by 1,000 times. It was originally a stroke that was extremely close to the power of a great emperor and it was then instantly increased by 1,000 times. Just how high of a level had it reached? Many years ago, the Master of Star Palace killed many with the second volume of Secret Skill of Star Palace. Many major forces and experts were terrified. As long as the Master of Star Palace was alive, there were no experts who dared to cast greedy eyes over lineage of Star. And I, in terms of power, am much stronger than the Master of Star Palace and the secret skill of Star Palace that I was performing was the third volume. It could increase the power by 1,000 times. Even though it is just one stroke, the one stroke is enough to wipe out everything. There was light that burst out of Jian Wushuang's eyes. The power of Emperor Sword principle that he had performed with full force exploded. The power of the sword principle exploded and instantly engulfed the entire galaxy. The region of Almighty's Alliance was engulfed by the power of the sword principle entirely. Heaven and earth were silent. In that region, there were only noises of sword light sweeping across and destroying everything. As for Almighty's Alliance, there were experts groaning and screaming in pain, but the noises that the sword light made covered everything. In the surrounding region, the guest elders from Lineage of Star, the remaining experts from Star Extermination Alliance and Supreme Ten Alliance, including Emperor God Tianling who was in a fierce fight far from Gen E, looked over. Their gazes were filled with shock and fear, an unprecedented scruple. The stroke was a stroke that made everyone at the scene feel hopeless. It was the strongest stroke that some of them had ever seen. Before the power of the stroke, a great emperor was nothing. Rumble. The sky shattered and the earth split. In the galaxy, there were huge space whirlpools that appeared in the sky from nowhere and they were swallowing up everything. The entire galaxy was quivering vigorously. The galaxy formation was shattering to pieces and finally collapsed. The formation collapsed? Hall Master Yuan, who was hiding in the depths of the galaxy, felt helpless at the sight. The galaxy formation was extremely powerful. Unless a great emperor come personally, no one could break it. For instance, he purposely let Star Extermination Alliance and Supreme Ten Alliance in. Almighty's Alliance and the other two alliances worked together and only broke an opening at the formation. But it was only an opening and the opening could be recovered very easily. But then, Hall Master Yuan never expected that the three alliances would team up but had never got to break the galaxy formation. However, the current Palace Master of Lineage of Star, Jian Wushuang, had broken it with the repercussion of the stroke he had performed earlier. Yes, only the repercussion. Jian Wushuang's stroke was terrifying. Everyone at the scene was curious too. With such a terrifying stroke, how did Almighty's Alliance do? One should know that the repercussions of the stroke broke the galaxy formation while its main power was covering the experts from Almighty's Alliance. Vroom vroom vroom. Boundless power exploded. The explosions of the sword light's power continued for a few breaths' time. Finally, the power subsided gradually. However, after everyone saw the region that was engulfed in the sword light earlier, the universe became pitch quiet. Dead silence. It was dead silent. There was no sound, only angry roars and groans. Everyone stared at the void that the sword light covered earlier in fear. The void was where the experts from Almighty's alliance originally gathered. There were more than 100 Almighties and all of them were powerful. But then, they were gone. The entire void shattered entirely, but there was no trace. It was pitch black without any light. Similarly, in the darkness, the scene where all experts towered in the void was long gone. There weren't any corpses, nor blood that filled the air. All gone. The void was gone along with Almighty's alliance's over 100 experts. They were all gone. No, not entirely. At least there was one who survived. The person was Emperor God Xiaoluo. But Emperor God Xiaoluo then didn't look like an Emperor God expert at all. His hair was messy and his face was pale. He was covered in blood like a bloody man, and the chaotic divine treasure level armor that was on the surface of his body let out a crisp sound and there were cracks on it. It was a chaotic divine treasure. A chaotic divine treasure level armor was hard to damage even if a great emperor launched a full hit, but then, it was damaged? Demon? You are a demon. Emperor God Xiaoluo looked terrified as he stared at Jian Wushuang as though he was looking at a monster while his body shivered vigorously. The surrounding experts from Star Extermination Alliance and Supreme 10 Alliance couldn't contain the fear in their hearts anymore. Is he human? Demon, he's a demon. My goodness, we are fighting against a demon? The experts from the two alliances, including some emperor gods, were screaming in despair. They were terrified. It was an alliance formed by over 100 Almighties. They were extremely strong. However, Jian Wushuang had only performed one stroke. With one stroke, the powerful Almighty's alliance then vanished into thin air. Chapter 1919. Another incident. Almighty's alliance was gone. The large amount of experts vanished into thin air under Jian Wushuang's one stroke. Only Emperor God Xiaoluo barely survived under the sweep of sword light due to his strong power and strong defense. However, it was pushing his limits. Swoosh, 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 swoosh. There were 4 resplendent golden lights that burst out simultaneously. Emperor God Xiaoluo's eyes were wide open, but he couldn't counterattack at all. The golden light pierced his head directly. Emperor God Xiaoluo was killed on the spot. Then all experts from Almighty's alliance were all dead. The scene struck fear in all experts from Star Extermination Alliance and Supreme 10 Alliance. Almighty's alliance is gone and you're next. Jian Wushuang's eyes were cold and he glanced at the experts from the other two alliances. They understood Jian Wushuang's cold gaze, and the experts from the other two alliances lost all will to withstand him. Run. Hurry up and run. The demons are coming for us. The experts from the two alliances were terrified by Jian Wushuang's terrifying stroke. Their pride as Almighties was then non-existent. At that very moment they weren't experts who were high and mighty. They were merely commoners, or not even commoners but non-entities. What they wanted to do then was survive. They only wanted to survive. As for their resentment or the secret skill of Star Palace, they couldn't be bothered about it then. They didn't dare to even think about it. They were dumbstruck by Jian Wushuang's stroke. Although there were still people who were rational in the two alliances, they knew that Jian Wushuang had performed the secret skill of Star Palace earlier that heightened the power of the stroke to that level. In a short period of time he definitely couldn't perform another stroke. They themselves knew that, but they couldn't stop the other experts who were terrified. Come back, hurry up and come back. Palace Master Wu Luo roared. Calm down. We still have fighting power. The Master of Emperor Sword Sect roared too. Emperor God Wu Yao and number 1 Divine King also wanted to turn the situation around. But it was useless. The experts who were terrified already couldn't hear what they were saying. They felt devastated and they were defeated. Then, if there were to be an only option to turn the situation around, it'd be someone's arrival to kill Jian Wushuang on the spot. As long as Jian Wushuang died, the experts could calm down and continue to fight. But the crucial question was who could kill Jian Wushuang among the two alliances. Emperor God Tianling? He was occupied by Jian Yi. On top of that, since the beginning of the fight, Jian Yi had performed countless techniques and skills. In terms of power, Jian Yi was finally stronger than him. With Jian Yi around, he didn't have any chance to attack. As for the others, it was impossible for them to kill Jian Wushuang. Lost, we've lost. Palace Master Wu Luo muttered. Although he wasn't willing to admit it, he knew that they'd lost. With 3 alliances, the fighting power of a total of over 200 Almighty suffered a crushing defeat by Lineage of Star. Under Jian Wushuang's shocking stroke, they were terrified. They were heavily defeated in the war. They were in a fix. Let's leave too. If we don't go now, our lives will be threatened. Emperor God Wu Yao and the Master of Emperor Sword sect stood side by side as they sighed. Without hesitation, the few peak Emperor gods started running too. The 2 alliances were defeated. Haha, everyone kill them. The guest elders from Lineage of Star started chasing after them under the lead of Emperor God Jian. Although they found it hard to calm themselves down, they knew that Jian Wushuang was on their side. With such an amazing existence, they felt even more confident. Kill. Die. The guest elders roared madly. Before the war started, they never thought that Lineage of Star could defeat all 3 alliances alone. They had never expected it, nor had they imagined it. But then it became reality. The experts from the other 2 alliances were fleeing while Lineage of Star chased them out. As both parties shuttled to and fro in the galaxy, they arrived at the border of the galaxy very soon. The galaxy formation collapsed when Jian Wushuang gave full play to his Emperor Sword principle. It couldn't recover in a short period of time. Hence, the experts from the 2 alliances had a chance to escape. If that weren't so, Hall Master Yuan could totally take control of the galaxy formation and make all the experts from the 2 alliances stay back. But then, he could only watch as the experts from the 2 alliances ran outside the galaxy. However, just as Lineage of Star intended to continue to chase after them, in an ordinary void outside the galaxy, there was a figure in a black robe standing there in silence. He was covered by the black robe and his appearance was unclear. The surrounding void was also filled with boundless darkness. Jian Wushuang is really capable. He could kill all 100 of experts from Almighty's alliance with one stroke. The black-robed figure muttered. The sword principle he performed just now was Emperor Sword principle. However, when he performed Emperor Sword principle, he also played the secret skill of Star Palace. Looking at the power exploded from the sword principle, he should have successfully cultivated the 3rd volume of the secret skill of Star Palace. The 3rd volume increases power by 1,000 times. The black-robed figure couldn't help but clench his fist. The secret skill of Star Palace was very scary. Because it was scary, the experts in Eternal Chaotic World, including some great emperors, were tempted by the secret skill. Then Jian Wushuang gave full play to the true scariness of the secret skill of Star Palace through the terrifying stroke earlier. That earlier stroke already reached the limit of a great emperor. Among the great emperors in Eternal Chaotic World, besides Emperor Bai, there shouldn't be anyone else who could give play to the similar power. Even I can't do it, the figure in a black robe muttered to himself. Through his remark, he affirmed the secret skill of Star Palace. Such a powerful secret skill fell into Lineage of Star's hands. It is too wasteful. Let me carry on and promote this secret skill. Just as he spoke, the black-robed figure had already moved forward in the void. In the void outside the galaxy, the chase continued. The 2 alliances had already paid an extremely heavy price during the chase. However, Lineage of Star did not intend to let them go. But suddenly, rumble. There was boundless darkness that suddenly flowed out. The entire universe instantly drowned in boundless darkness, like abysmal Acheron. At the very core of the boundless darkness, a black-robed figure slowly stepped out. Looking at the newcomer, everyone was shocked and there was fear in their eyes. Jian Wushuang's eyes also dilated in shock. Abysmal Saint Master. Chapter 1920 Great Emperor's Arrival. The boundless darkness swept across. Everything was engulfed in total darkness. The darkness seemed to have existed since ancient times. The experts from the 2 alliances who were originally running in madness, the guest elders and Dao soldiers from Lineage of Star, involuntarily stopped. All of them looked at the source of the darkness. At the core of the boundless darkness, there was a figure in black robe. Everyone was attracted by the figure in the black robe. At that moment, the figure in the black robe was the ruler of the boundless darkness. It's Saint Master. Saint Master is here. Palace Master Wu Luo from Abysmal Palace and a few remaining experts from Abysmal Palace were thrilled with excitement when they saw the incomer. Abysmal Saint Master. Jian Wushuang's face grew grave. Abysmal Saint Master had revealed his intention to kill Jian Wushuang long ago. For instance, the reason why Abysmal Palace would fight with Lineage of Star had been instigated by Abysmal Saint Master. Then Abysmal Saint Master revealed himself. On top of that, it wasn't just Abysmal Saint Master's consciousness embodiment, it was his original body. Abysmal Saint Master came personally with his original body. Great Emperor visits personally? Everyone at the scene was dumbfounded. Jian Wushuang took a deep breath and forced himself to calm down. Then he said politely, Jian Wushuang greets Abysmal Saint Master. I wonder why did Saint Master come to visit personally? Although Jian Wushuang knew his purpose for visiting, he couldn't just flip at him after all. Jian Wushuang didn't want to give Abysmal Saint Master any excuse to attack either. He bowed as he should, he displayed reverence as he should. Jian Wushuang, do you know you are guilty? Abysmal Saint Master was standing at the core of the darkness as a cold gaze burst out from the figure in black robe. Guilty? Jian Wushuang was stunned and shook his head. I don't know. Don't know. You massacred wantonly previously. Many Sir Gods and Emperor Gods from Sanctuary Alliance died by your hands. However, as you have great potential and you are gifted, we of Sanctuary Alliance have been rather forgiving. We never thought that you would behave even more wildly. In today's war, you killed over 100 Almighties from Sanctuary Alliance. Over 100 Almighties? You made Sanctuary Alliance suffer such a great loss and you dare say you don't know your wrongdoing? Today I will punish you on behalf of Sanctuary Alliance. Abysmal Saint Master's cold voice reverberated in the dark universe. His speech was tainted with undoubted dignity. Especially the part where he said he would punish him struck fear in the surrounding experts. Punish? Abysmal Saint Master wants to punish Jian Wushuang? There were many experts that were stunned. Some were shocked and some were excited. Especially the experts from the two alliance, they were instantly filled with happiness. With the terrifying stroke earlier, Jian Wushuang had wiped out over 100 Almighties from Almighty's alliance. The terrifying scene continued to replay in the experts' head and couldn't be pushed aside. In their hearts, Jian Wushuang had already become a demon. He had already become true death, a terrifying existence. They were terrified by Jian Wushuang's power. With Jian Wushuang was around, their pride and courage as an almighty was nowhere to be seen. The two alliances' defeats derived from it as well. But then, Abysmal Saint Master wanted to punish the demon, the supreme death. How could they not feel excited? How could they not find it comforting? The experts from Lineage of Star were naturally angry. Suddenly, Virum. There was a boundless aura that slowly soared. Everyone immediately looked and saw Chen Mingzi gripping a token tight. He had already smashed the token into pieces. Only Jian Wushuang knew Chen Mingzi's true identity, Purple Moon Emperor's servant. The token that Chen Mingzi had smashed was naturally Purple Moon Emperor's. As expected, the moment the token was smashed, a consciousness embodiment substantiated in the universe. His purple hair and cold, evil-looking face with a faint smile was simply enchanting. Purple Moon Emperor. It's Purple Moon Emperor. Purple Moon Emperor's consciousness embodiment has descended too. The experts at the scene exclaimed again. Abysmal Saint Master, who was like the ruler of darkness, looked. Purple Moon, what are you doing here? Abysmal Saint Master, this belongs to Purple Moon Sanctuary. As you can visit, why can't I, the owner of Purple Moon Sanctuary, be here too? Purple Moon Emperor smiled as he replied. That's true, Abysmal Saint Master nodded faintly. As you are here, you can be a witness for me. I am going to punish Jian Wushuang personally now. Punish? Abysmal Saint Master, how did Jian Wushuang offend you so badly that you would come personally in your original body to punish him? Purple Moon Emperor asked in a deep voice. He never offended me. However, all these years he massacred wantonly an eternal chaotic world. He massacred a large number of experts previously. Today he was even more ridiculous. He exterminated over 100 Almighties from Sanctuary Alliance with his power alone. It's not even enough if I were to kill such a vicious man 100 times over and over again, Abysmal Saint Master said in a cold voice. From what I know, the experts that Jian Wushuang killed were either those who shared deep-seated resentment against Lineage of Star or those who cast greedy eyes over the secret skill of Star Palace. They took the initiative to charge to Lineage of Star. In other words, he did not massacre wantonly. He shouldn't be considered to be violating Sanctuary Alliance's rules, right? Purple Moon Emperor squinted his eyes and said, Abysmal Saint Master, how about this? I already sent a message to Ancestor Tianqin and East Royal Emperor. The incident that happened over the years in Sanctuary Alliance is in their control. When they arrive, let's discuss and decide if Jian Wushuang has broken the rule and if he massacred wantonly. By then it won't be too late to take action. Jian Wushuang has gone mad. Any extra moment he lives might bring a disaster to Sanctuary Alliance. It's unnecessary to wait for them. As I said, he violated the rules, he did. I say he should die, so he should. Abysmal Saint Master burst out a chilly stare. Purple Moon, move aside. Abysmal Saint Master, this is Purple Moon's sanctuary. This is my territory. Aren't you too barbaric in conduct? Purple Moon Emperor roared in anger. Barbaric? If you were to come in your original body, you might qualify for me to consider this again. However, with just your consciousness embodiment, you want to stop me? Go away. Abysmal Saint Master's gaze was cold. There was a sudden roar, and the roar contained boundless power, like the roar of heaven and earth. It instantly formed a terrifying space storm and spun to the void where Purple Moon Emperor's consciousness embodiment was. The void instantly shattered along with Purple Moon Emperor's consciousness embodiment. Abysmal, how dare you? Purple Moon Emperor was furious. However, he had yet to finish his sentence and his consciousness embodiment dispersed. The surrounding people saw what had happened and they looked shocked. No one had ever expected that they were both great emperors, but Abysmal Saint Master didn't bother with Purple Moon Emperor at all. He even extinguished Purple Moon Emperor's consciousness embodiment directly before everyone. Chapter 1921. Nowhere to escape. Abysmal Saint Master is determined to kill me. He didn't even care about the rules of Sanctuary Alliance. He even extinguished Purple Moon Emperor's consciousness embodiment. Jian Wushuang's face grew grave. At the same time, Chen Mingzi immediately sent him a message. Jian Wushuang, Master sent me a message. He told you to hold on for a while and that he will arrive personally in his original body soon. Jian Wushuang felt extremely solemn. He wanted Jian Wushuang to withstand for a while in Abysmal Saint Master's hands? Jian Wushuang, as I want to kill you, there is no one in this world who can save you. Abysmal Saint Master let his murderous intention soar. He continued to stand on the spot and there wasn't any obvious movement of his body, but the surrounding boundless darkness started churning in madness. Virum. The boundless darkness substantiated and formed a black spear in front of Jian Wushuang. The black spear could destroy everything. At the very moment it took shape, every expert revealed a hopeless expression. A great emperor descended and took action personally. As a great emperor, even if it was a casual hit, its power wouldn't be defendable by an ordinary emperor god. Then Abysmal Saint Master took action personally. Swoosh. A black spear pierced the void and flew at Jian Wushuang. As the spear flew at him, Jian Wushuang could only feel the surrounding darkness pressing on him, and his power couldn't be performed under the pressure of the darkness. He didn't even have the ability to flee. Difference. Jian Wushuang then felt an unprecedented difference in power. Emperor God and Great Emperor was merely one step apart. However, the one step was vastly different. If I didn't perform my strongest trump card, increasing my power by 1,000 times via the third volume of the secret skill of Star Palace should be sufficient, or even breaking the spear before me. But now... Jian Wushuang shook his head slowly. He knew that he wouldn't be able to block Abysmal Saint Master. Jian. At the crucial moment, Jian Wushuang roared. Swoosh. There was a figure that appeared before Jian Wushuang, and it was Jian Wushuang's servant. Jian. As his servant, he was absolutely loyal to Jian Wushuang. With Jian Wushuang's command, even if he was going to die, he would never hesitate. Then, under Jian Wushuang's command, Jian Yi immediately pointed with his finger. With one point, heaven and earth could be destroyed. There was a ray of black light that burst out. The black light constantly magnified. It clashed with the black spear directly. Bang. There was a loud bang, and even space-time seemed to be unable to endure the power of both parties' attacks. After it clashed, swoosh. Jian Yi's figure turned into flowing light and retreated for tens of thousands of miles. Then he stopped. Abysmal Saint Master looked Jian Yi in shock. To be able to block my hit, that's not too shabby. Maybe you stand a chance to fight against Underworld God. You might even be able to fight with a great emperor. It's a pity that I wasn't an ordinary great emperor like Purple Moon. I am in the top 3 of Heaven and Earth Supreme ranking list. All over the world, besides Emperor Bai, who else is my match? How dare you stop me? Now go to hell together. Rumble. Heaven and earth shook. Abysmal Saint Master, who was at the core of the boundless darkness, attacked straight away. He was originally standing on the ground and randomly manipulated his divine power as a black spear to attack. But then he instantly attacked. Jian Yi used that skill. Jian Wushuang's eyes were like lightning and he let out a scream. Jian Yi, who stood in front of Jian Wushuang, had blood fog churning on his body. At the same time, there was a golden light that burst out from his eyes. Simultaneously, his body quivered and a strange bolt of power swept across. All core experts from Lineage of Star would be familiar with the Bolt of Power. It was the secret skill of Star Palace. Yes, Jian had cultivated secret skill of Star Palace as well. When he was recovering his power in Lineage of Star, he was also preparing for the Century War. Wushuang had intentionally sent Jian to Scripture Depository of Lineage of Star so that Jian could receive the inheritance of secret skill of Star Palace. However, it was a pity that Jian was similar to most of the experts from Lineage of Star. He had only managed to cultivate the first volume of secret skill of Star Palace. As for the second volume, although he put in a lot of effort, he hadn't succeeded. One should know that Jian's fighting power could match evenly with an underworld god's. When he came across an ordinary great emperor like Purple Moon Emperor, who was at the bottom of the rank, he could fight a match. With such power, if he were to perform the first volume of the secret skill of Star Palace, he could instantly increase his power by tenfold. It enabled Jian to possess the fighting power of a great emperor in an instant. The move was also one of the trump cards that Jian Wushuang had prepared in order to prevent the unpredictable. However, the unpredictable had happened then. Jian block him. Jian Wushuang roared. Roar. Jian roared and his aura instantly rose to a brand new level with the support of the power of Star. His body turned illusory and blocked the Abysmal Saint Master. The secret skill of Star Palace? Abysmal Saint Master squinted his eyes. It's a pity that it was only the first volume and the lasting period is only 10 breaths at most. Even if you could hold me back for 10 breaths, what happens after the 10 breaths? Abysmal Saint Master sneered. His understanding about the secret skill of Star Palace obviously was much higher than the others. He even knew the lasting period of the first volume of the secret skill of Star Palace. Just as Jian was holding Abysmal Saint Master back, Jian Wushuang thought to himself, 10 breaths, Jian could only hold him back for 10 breaths at most. Within this 10 breaths I have to run with all my strength. Run, run, run. Jian Wushuang was decisive and he didn't hesitate at all. At that very moment, he turned and ran at his fastest speed to the void far away. He knew that Abysmal Saint Master's main target was him. As for Lineage of Star, they shouldn't be involved. The worst possible scenario would be passing him the inheritance of secret skill of Star Palace. As for the other two alliances, they were heavily defeated and it was impossible for them to pose any threat to Lineage of Star. Even if he ran away, Lineage of Star should be able to stay alive. However, just as he turned to run, Abysmal Saint Master, who stood by Jian, already saw through his thoughts. Wanna run? Hee, unless you're a great emperor, you can't run away from me in this universe. Abysmal Saint Master's confident laugh reverberated in the universe. Just as he spoke, the surrounding darkness suddenly came alive like an exotic beast. The boundless, dark magical clouds formed terrifyingly huge beasts and these beasts were holding metal chains in their mouths. The darkness covered everything. Rumble. A huge darkness prison appeared out of nowhere. The entire universe, the entire spacetime was instantly locked. Jian Wushuang and everyone on the spot were engulfed in the darkness. It was impossible for any of them to run away. Chapter 1922 Fought and Never Regret. Nowhere to run. Yes, the darkness prison had formed and the entire spacetime was frozen. Jian Wushuang had nowhere to run. There's no way to escape? Jian Wushuang looked at the darkness prison in front of him. He could feel the power of the darkness prison. With his power alone, it would have been impossible if he wanted to break the darkness prison to flee. The surrounding experts from Lineage of Star and the other two alliances looked at Jian Wushuang. He is doomed. A great emperor descended personally and it is really extraordinary. Jian Wushuang can't escape. Although Jian Wushuang's power and talent is admirable, he is dealing with a great emperor after all. That's it for him. It's a pity. He's such a genius. The experts were sighing emotionally. They could tell that Jian Wushuang was in a hopeless situation. His outcome was definitely death. There was almost no possibility that he could stay alive. Even the experts from Lineage of Star, who were on the same side as Jian Wushuang, felt hopeless for his situation too. But just then, Hong. There was a sudden war intention that suddenly soared. Such war intention brought about boundless unyieldingness. What? The experts on the spot turned to look at the source of the war intention in shock. It's Jian Wushuang. Everyone stared. Before their gaze, Jian Wushuang's face was distorted and he looked ferocious. In his eyes, there was unprecedented madness. There was billowing war intention with boundless unyieldingness that swept out from his body. As I can't run away, let's fight a life and death battle. Jian Wushuang roared in anger and his roar reverberated in the air. Heaven and earth quivered. Fight. 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 In every direction, including in all the experts' heads, there were roars that resounded. It never faded away. Everyone at the spot, including heaven and earth, could feel Jian Wushuang's unyieldingness. That's Jian Wushuang. He was unyielding in character, just like a huge rock. No matter how brutal the storm, he wouldn't move an inch. Even though he was cornered in a hopeless situation, he would never admit defeat, he would never lower his head, nor would he feel hopeless. Since birth until then, over the years, he had never known the word hopeless. Even if the universe won't tolerate it and the sky abandons me, even if my body were to be exterminated and vanish into thin air, I, Jian Wushuang, swear to fight a life-and-death battle. Fight and never regret. Hong. The universe moved. His soaring war intention shot to the highest heaven. Jian Wushuang stood erect in the dark void while Blood Mountain sword in his hands whistled and shrilled. Such unyieldingness was enough to shock the world. In the surrounding dark void, a large number of experts revealed shocked expressions. Everyone looked at Jian Wushuang with a complicated expression. No one expected that Jian Wushuang, who had reached the end of the road, who had reached a hopeless situation, would want to fight against sky and earth, against all living things in the universe. Jian Wushuang, although soaring Heaven King Palace and you shared deep-seated resentment, I, Tianling, am in awe of you. Emperor God Tianling looked at Jian Wushuang with a tinge of admiration as he stood in the void. Although the other experts viewed Jian Wushuang as their enemy and many wanted to eat his flesh and drink his blood, they couldn't help but revere him. From the bottom of their hearts, they determined that Jian Wushuang was a true expert. He was a super expert with indomitable spirit who never lowered his head. Then the expert was going to fight the last battle of his life. Bang. There was a terrifying bang. Then a flowing light burst out. It was Jian. The 10 breaths had ended and Jian had tried his best to hold back Abysmal Saint Master. But then he had reached his limit. Abysmal Saint Master had finally freed himself. Jian Wushuang, you have great willpower. At such a moment you are still unwilling to lower your head. One should know that if you were to kneel down and kowtow or beg for mercy, I might let you off the hook, Abysmal Saint Master scoffed. Jian Wushuang never speak, but he slowly took steps forward in the void. The first step he took, bang. In between his eyebrows, the first ancient tribe star broke. Then another step. Bang. Bang. The second and the third ancient tribe stars broke at the same time. The third step. Bang. 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 7 ancient tribe stars broke simultaneously. 7 star broke altogether. Besides the secret skill of Star Palace, it was the last trump card that Jian Wushuang could use. Boundless ancient tribe bloodline power concentrated all over his body. As Jian Wushuang suddenly lifted his head, his bloodshot eyes were like 2 crimson streaks of lightning that burst out at Abysmal Saint Master before him. At the same time, in the dark void, there was a beautiful world of mountains and rivers that appeared from nowhere. Mountain river map then spread out again. Rolling mountains and rivers, segregated into 9 provinces. Mountain river as palm and 9 province as seal, found a country with rivers and mountains. 9 province 4th seal, Yin province as the seal. Turn up the cloud. As Jian Wushuang broke 7 stars and the power of ancient tribe bloodline was drawn into mountain river map. From the world of mountains and rivers, a lofty continent descended from the air. 9 province the 4th seal. It was the strongest move that Jian Wushuang could perform using his power of 7 stars and all of the fighting power that he could bring to play. It was also his last move. After that move, either his opponent died or he would rumble. A lofty continent pressed down. In an instant, all living in the universe quivered in fear. The experts from the universe couldn't help but lifted their heads. Their eyes were filled with unprecedented fear. They felt the power contained in the lofty continent from above. The power also exceeded the range of an emperor god and it had reached the level of a great emperor god. It was absolutely evenly matched to the strongest hit by a great emperor. But what they never expected was that, in such a hopeless situation, even Jian Wushuang, who had performed a stroke with the secret skill of Star Palace which had exterminated over 100 Almighties from Almighty's alliance, should have played all his trump cards. He was already at this state, but he still could perform such a terrifying hit that could match with a great emperor. He still had the power to go all out. Just how many trump cards does Jian Wushuang have? He's like a black hole. Earlier he killed the entire Almighty's alliance with 1 stroke. Now he can perform such a terrifying hit? Monster Jian Wushuang is really a monster. It'd be best if Jian Wushuang died in this fight. If he doesn't, I can't imagine just how scary he will become in the future. Everyone was terrified. They were shocked. Chapter 1923. It's him. Palace Master. Among the crowd, Hall Master Guexin, Hall Master Nye Yun and Hall Master Yuan, who were far away, clenched their hands as their eyes shimmered with light. Lineage of Star, since its establishment, had had 2 Palace Masters. Both the Palace Masters were shocking. It was Master of Star Palace previously, and then, it was Jian Wushuang. They were the mainstays of Lineage of Star, also the god in all experts and disciples' hearts of Lineage of Star. Even though they were defeated before, they had never yielded nor lowered their heads. No matter how powerful their opponents were, they swore to fight a beautiful battle. They were their Palace Masters. At the core of the boundless void, Abysmal Saint Master glanced at the lofty continent that had descended from the sky and looked shocked. Then he humphed coldly and waved his sleeve. Swoosh, 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 swoosh. Instantly there were countless black lights that burst out. These lights could kill an emperor god easily, and there were more than a dozen of them. It was almost instantly that the lights hit the lofty continent. Rumble. There were instantly a few bangs within the descending lofty continent. The corners of the continent that were pierced by the black lights had a few holes, while boundless divine powers swept out to the surroundings. Break? The low roar was like anger that reverberated in the sky. Even though the lofty continent was pierced with a dozen holes, it was still sturdily held together but never broke. The lofty continent continued to press down. Until then, it had covered Abysmal Saint Master entirely. Virum. The terrifying power finally exploded. The power exploded and the surrounding billion miles of void instantly became barren. The terrifying power made everyone on the spot, including the peak Emperor gods, gulp. Just like Emperor God Tianling, his face was extremely solemn. Such power was totally impossible to withstand if one didn't possess the fighting power of a great emperor. Previously he had wanted to kill Jian Wushuang, but it had only looked like a joke then. But just then, boundless darkness swept out madly and formed a huge darkness whirlpool. The darkness whirlpool swallowed everything in the universe mercilessly. It had also swallowed up the power that was given out from the lofty continent. In a short while, the entire universe had resumed its tranquility and the divine power was swallowed up. The remaining huge darkness whirlpool was still spinning in madness. In the core of the darkness whirlpool, there was a figure in a black robe standing. It was Abysmal Saint Master. As expected. Looking at the sight, no one at the scene was surprised. They knew clearly that Jian Wushuang was fighting his last battle and performing his strongest, last hit. Although it was powerful enough to move a great emperor move. However, Abysmal Saint Master was the third superb existence on Heaven and Earth Supreme ranking list after all. Among great emperors, Red Dragon King on the second place was as powerful as he was. Only the Supreme Emperor Bai could be above him. Such a powerful Emperor Bai was naturally impossible for Jian Wushuang to kill with one hit. It would be extremely difficult just to hurt him. In the huge whirlpool, Abysmal Saint Master patted the dust on his clothes and looked at Jian Wushuang with a pair of cold eyes and a tinge of disdain. Jian Wushuang, you're quite capable. After you perform the secret skill of Star Palace, you can still perform a hit that matches evenly with a great emperor's hit. If you hadn't used the secret skill of Star Palace earlier to kill Almighty's alliance but had used it the third volume of secret skill of Star Palace in support of the technique just now to kill me, I'd be severely injured. What Abysmal Saint Master had said was the truth. Jian Wushuang was giving his all to launch the final hit, which reached the level of a great emperor. If he were to use the third volume of the secret skill of Star Palace, that'd be 1,000 times his current power. Even though he was an expert among the great emperors, he would definitely be severely injured, even if he survived under that kind of attack. It's a pity that you have exhausted your limited abilities. You don't stand a chance. Now let me give you a ride. Abysmal Saint Master smirked and there was black light that instantly burst out. Although the size of the black light wasn't big, the power contained was enough to kill any great emperor easily. Because of the hit that he had performed earlier, he had used up his power of ancient tribe bloodline after he had broken 7 stars altogether. Jian Wushuang then had a certain level of fighting power, but it was impossible for him to withstand the hit. It's going to end? Jian Wushuang couldn't help but mutter. But suddenly, Jian Wushuang stared. He could instantly feel the unique mark that someone had left on his body suddenly become scorching hot. A strange power swept out from the mark. Virum. The black light that burst out at Jian Wushuang suddenly dispersed into thin air without any trace. It vanished into thin air as though it didn't exist. A figure suddenly appeared before Jian Wushuang. With the appearance of the figure, the surrounding universe became quiet again. It was silent. No one spoke anymore. Everyone's attention was on the figure that had suddenly appeared. Even Jian Wushuang opened his eyes wide and he stared at the person in front of him. It's him? Jian Wushuang was shocked and terrified. He was in a snow-white robe that wasn't tainted with any dust. He was icy with a tinge of arrogance. Both his hands were behind his body as he towered in the void with his slender body. There was no aura that was given out from his body, as though he was just air. However, such a person, his eye could see nothing worthwhile all around. He looked down on every living thing in the universe. He overlooked even heaven and earth with his deep eyes. He stood there without any action, without speaking, but everything in the universe lost its shine. Just like Abysmal Saint Master, he stood erect in the core of the boundless darkness, just like the ruler of the darkness. However, when the person appeared, the surrounding darkness immediately yielded to him. In front of the person was Abysmal Saint Master. He didn't seem to be an expert of great emperor level. He couldn't even be seen as an ordinary cultivator. It was as though he was just a non-entity. Yes, a non-entity. He saw nothing worthwhile. Even though Abysmal Saint Master was only a non-entity in front of him. There was a sudden bang that resounded. It was from the surrounding darkness, and there was a hole in the darkness prison. Then there was a figure that plunged in at high speed. That person was Purple Moon Emperor. His original body had arrived at the battlefield. However, no one had noticed his arrival. Everyone was attracted by the arrogant man in the snow-white robe in front of Jian Wushuang. Chapter 1924. One glance, one stroke. Who is he? Purple Moon Emperor looked at the arrogant man in the white robe in shock. He never seen him before. However, from the first glance, he could tell that he was very scary. Such scariness, he who was a great emperor who had never felt it from anyone else before. Jian Wushuang stared at the person in front of him. This person, no one knew him, but he knew him. He was the strange person, the mysterious expert that Jian Wushuang had met at Chilly Wind Valley back when he had been wandering in the ancient battlefield. He was a strange person. Back then, Jian Wushuang had offended him, but he didn't attack, nor did he kill Jian Wushuang, but he left a unique mark on Jian Wushuang's body. Jian Wushuang couldn't remove the mark at all. But it was merely a mark, so Jian Wushuang didn't worry much about it. The mysterious expert from ancient battlefield appeared in front of him directly, through the mark? What kind of technique was that? Who are you? The low voice belonged to Abysmal Saint Master. He was a great emperor after all, and he was the top existence among great emperors. Although he could feel the person in front of him was very strong and probably not any weaker than him, he could maintain his calmness. The arrogant man in the white robe who stood in front of Jian Wushuang didn't even look at Abysmal Saint Master but only spat, "Go away." It was merely a short reply without any power. However, it gave an illusion to everyone that the reply was the universe's will. Courting death. Abysmal Saint Master suddenly became furious. He was Abysmal Saint Master. Even Emperor Bai wouldn't reprimand him so directly. The person who popped out of nowhere had commanded him to leave. How could he not be furious? In this world, besides Emperor Bai, I don't care about anyone else. Who the hell are you? As Abysmal Saint Master raged furiously, there was a chilly gleam in his eyes and the surrounding boundless dark sky started flowing. Rumble. There were boundless dark clouds that swept out. Then there was instantly a huge dark beast which was the size of 1,000,000 miles, that appeared from nowhere. The dark beast opened its mouth and its mouth was a huge darkness whirlpool, the exact whirlpool that swallowed all the power of the seal, turn up the cloud that Jian Wushuang had performed earlier. Then, the whirlpool was swirling at the arrogant man in the white robe. As the dark beast moved, it shattered the earth and split the sky. Everyone on the scene was terrified. Even Purple Moon Emperor's eyes dilated in shock when he saw it. He was also a great emperor, but Abysmal Saint Master was listed on the 3rd place while he was at the bottom of the ranking list among all great emperors. The differences in their power was naturally vast. Even if he were to give his all, he could at most keep himself alive under Abysmal Saint Master's attack. Then he could tell that Abysmal Saint Master had gone all out. This person, could he withstand Abysmal? Purple Moon Emperor muttered. Just then, the arrogant man in the white robe that everyone was fixing their gazes upon suddenly lifted his head. Without any other action, merely a simple act of lifting his head and a look. A glance and a will, bang. The dark beast that covered a range of 1,000,000 miles instantly shattered. The dark clouds then vanished into thin air. At the same time, the surrounding universe that was drowning in darkness because of Abysmal Saint Master's existence suddenly dispersed under the gaze of the arrogant man in the white robe. Everything disappeared in an instant and the universe regained light. It was left with no trace of darkness. How is that possible? Abysmal Saint Master stared as he stood there. He couldn't feel any darkness from the surroundings. My goodness, Purple Moon Emperor was shocked. Everyone at the scene exclaimed in surprise. As you already attacked, I shall return with one stroke. The arrogant man in white robe remained at the same spot as he spoke coldly. In his hands that were placed behind him, he slowly extended one of the fingers and glided to the void where Abysmal Saint Master was. That glide was like an ordinary child drawing with his fingers in the void. It was smooth yet extremely simple. Virum. There was a sudden flash of sword light. The sword light wasn't glorious but rather ordinary and calm. However, such a sword light made Abysmal Saint Master's soul fly away and scatter. He tried his best to perform skills to withstand it, but he was surprised to find out that he couldn't move at all. Can't move? I, a great emperor, can't move? Abysmal Saint Master was dumbfounded as he quivered in fear. He could only watch as the sword light continued to magnify in his eyes. He couldn't even lift up his hand to block. Bang. The sword light descended and there was a loud bang. The black armor that Abysmal Saint Master was wearing was a suit of armor from ancient times that he had obtained during the time he had wandered in an ancient mystery land many years ago. The armor was extremely strong and it was definitely chaotic divine treasure level. It could even be much stronger than any ordinary chaotic divine treasure. With the armor, Abysmal Saint Master had even dared to venture into some dangerous places when he was in ancient mystery land. But then, as the sword light swept out, the armor that he had been wearing broke apart. It shattered into pieces. His chaotic divine treasure level armor shattered into pieces under the attack of the sword light. The power of the sword light then hit his body. Poof. Abysmal Saint Master lifted his head and spat a mouthful of blood. He flew out like a dead dog. However, the void surrounding him wasn't damaged at all, nor was there any divine power or sword light that swept out. It was only Abysmal Saint Master alone who was injured. Everyone saw the scene. Silence. It was dead silent. Everyone gawked at the arrogant man in the white robe. With one glance, he had split heaven and earth, shattered the dark beast and dispersed the surrounding darkness. With one glide of his finger, there was a sword light that had shattered the armor on Abysmal Saint Master and caused Abysmal Saint Master to be severely injured. These were done by the man in the white robe. Who the hell is he? Purple Moon Emperor was roaring madly in his heart. The roar was hysterical. The arrogant man in the white robe then put his hands behind his back again. He then looked in the direction of Abysmal Saint Master. You are not worth killing. Go away. Ichi's voice reverberated. Abysmal Saint Master then spat another mouthful of blood when he heard that and he nearly fainted. All the surrounding experts stared. They then understood that Abysmal Saint Master was alive merely because he wasn't worth killing? Because he wasn't worthy? That was why he was alive? Everyone on the spot was dumbfounded. Chapter 1925 Take a Stroke of My Sword. Saint Master. Palace Master Wu Luo and other experts from Abysmal Palace came next to Abysmal Saint Master. Abysmal Saint Master's face was pale. The aura from his body wasn't even comparable to an ordinary Sir God's. He looked at the arrogant man in the white robe with hatred but didn't dare to rage. He knew clearly that that man had the power to kill him easily. He was in great disbelief. Over the years, he had been on the third place on Heaven and Earth Supreme Ranking list. Even Red Dragon King, who was on the second place, didn't care about Red Dragon King much, even though he was on a higher ranking than he was. He thought that only Emperor Bai could really be above him in the world. He had always thought so. But then, when he saw the arrogant man in the white robe that day, the pride in him had instantly vanished. It was obvious that he belittled the world. Let's go. Abysmal Saint Master commanded with great difficulty. Then he and everyone from Abysmal Palace left in a fix. The experts on the scene sighed emotionally at the sight. One should know that Abysmal Saint Master was behaving barbarically just a while ago. His terrifying power made everyone feel hopeless. In the blink of an eye, he had been severely injured and he couldn't even utter a single word before he left. The one who had led to the current situation was the arrogant man in the white robe who was the center of attention. Everyone was questioning from the bottom of their hearts with great curiosity, who the hell is this person? Everyone was curious about the identity of the arrogant man in the white robe. Senior. Jian Wushuang instantly spoke with the intention to ask. However, the arrogant man in the white robe didn't turn to look at Jian Wushuang but his gaze was fixed in another direction. Everyone looked in the direction where the arrogant man was looking. It was a vast void. However, at the end of the vast void, there was a faint black dot. Before everyone's gaze, the black dot continuously magnified. In the end, it appeared in front of everyone. The black dot was a human figure. He was in a gray robe and had white hair and white eyes. His skin was also terrifyingly fair. He was actually a man, but he had an enchanting appearance that put all women in eternal chaotic world to shame. Such an enchanting appearance with such fair skin, he looked rather different. The enchanting man with white hair and white eyes appeared in the void, and the experts then held their breaths in silence again. Purple Moon Emperor's eyes dilated in shock again. Bai, Emperor Bai. The moment someone called his name, it instantly stirred a hubbub. Emperor Bai. He is Emperor Bai? The supreme existence in eternal chaotic world, Emperor Bai, who is widely acknowledged as the strongest, has come here personally? My goodness, what is going on today? Everyone was dumbfounded. Great Emperor, the experts on the top of the pyramid in eternal chaotic world. Every one of them were truly high and above, overlords of the sanctuaries. Such an existence was hard to be seen normally, but then, Abysmal Saint Master and Purple Moon Emperor had made an appearance one after another. Then, there was a mysterious, arrogant man in a white robe that dispersed boundless darkness with one glance and injured Abysmal Saint Master with one stroke. By then, even Emperor Bai had come to the scene personally. He was the legendary Emperor Bai. The true strongest one in eternal chaotic world. Legend. That is Emperor Bai? Jian Wushuang looked at the newcomer with surprise as well. He had never expected the high and mighty Emperor Bai to rush to this side of the void at such a crucial moment. Plus, the moment Emperor Bai appeared, his white eyes, that seemed to be able to see through everything in the universe, were fixed upon the arrogant man in the white robe. As the strongest one, Emperor Bai was clear about just how powerful the man in the white robe was. You are the strongest one in the world now? The arrogant man in the white robe remained towering in the void as he looked at Emperor Bai coldly. I dare not accept the honor. I wonder what your name is? Emperor Bai flashed a gentle smile and behaved politely. If you can withstand my sword stroke, you'll get to know my name, the arrogant man in the white robe replied. Withstand your stroke? I'd like to try, Emperor Bai smiled faintly. A simple conversation and everyone's eyes dilated in shock. The arrogant man in the white robe, who had injured Abysmal Saint Master with one stroke, was going to fight with Emperor Bai now? Retreat. Hurry up and fall back. The experts at the scene quickly retreated far away without hesitation. Even experts like Jian Wushuang, Emperor God Tianling, Jian quickly fall back at times like that. Even Purple Moon Emperor retreated without hesitation. They knew clearly that, no matter if it was Emperor Bai or the mysterious arrogant man in the white robe, they both had an extremely unrivaled power. Regarding the battle between the two, no great emperor dared to get involved. It was no different from courting death. In the vast void, the two human figures looked at one another 1,000,000 miles apart. In the expanse of the surrounding 1,000,000,000 miles, there was no one else. The experts from Lineage of Star and the remaining experts from the other two alliances had retreated far away. They were staring at the middle of the void with boundless excitement and anticipation with their eyes wide open. Even Purple Moon Emperor was extremely looking forward to the battle. Finally, the arrogant man in the white robe, who was at the core of the void, lifted his hand while leaving the other behind his back. Then, he extended one finger and glided it at the void before him. The movement was like he was scribbling. It was casual but smooth. There was no sword intention or divine power that spread out. However, at the very moment he moved his fingers, Hong! Heaven and earth shook. From the middle of the void, the sky and earth started splitting apart. A huge crack appeared from nowhere. As everyone looked on in terror, the crack magnified at a terrifying speed. 100 miles. 1,000 miles. 10,000 miles. Million miles. In the end, it covered an expanse of 100 million miles. The 100 million miles crack appeared and crossed the entire universe. The surrounding space, air, including space-time, all elements in the universe became obsolete. In the entire universe there was no other substance. There was a sword light that slowly lit. Very dim and unnoticeable sword light. If it was on a normal day, the sword light would never attract anyone's attention. But then, the sword light was the only existing substance in the vast universe. It became the one and only. It became eternal. This stroke, Jian Wushuang, who was far away from the battlefield, saw the sword light that became the one and only, and his eyes lost focus. Chapter 1926 Emperor 13. Jian Wushuang was truly a sword cultivator. He possessed high comprehension level in sword principle. Then, when he saw the sword principle that the arrogant man in the white robe had performed, Jian Wushuang could only feel a brand new sword principle appeared before him. He had never thought that a stroke of sword could make all living things in the universe, including spacetime, disperse. A sword was a sword after all, a sharp weapon to kill enemy. But then, a sword wasn't as simple. The experts at the scene were attracted by the sword principle that the arrogant man in the white robe had used. The sword light was like the core of the universe. Looking at the sword light, there was a burst of light from Emperor Bai's eyes. Then his face grew solemn as well. Rumble. There was an aura that soared up from Emperor Bai. The aura was overlooking everything in the universe. It was an aura that was high above the masses. It belonged to the strongest person in the universe. Emperor Bai was an expert in eternal chaotic world. It was an aura that belonged to him. At the same time, a huge golden shadow appeared from his body. The golden shadow was a golden emperor. He was 99,000 zhang tall and 3,000 zhang broad. His golden eyes looked at everything as though it was nothing. His gaze looked as though the universe should yield to him. Emperor Bai attacked. He slowly lifted his slender arm, then he clenched his fist tightly and punched. The golden emperor shadow punched too. His punch was powerful enough to push away chaotic. However, regardless of if it was Emperor Bai's punch or the arrogant man's sword light, there was no overflow of power. It felt so ordinary. The power control of both parties were at a shocking level. Then the two parties collided directly. Once they collided, boundless power swept out. The surrounding tens of billions of miles were engulfed by boundless power. However, even though the power was appalling, there wasn't any loud bang, only noises that were made of compressing energy. The experts who were watching from afar thought they were far enough away. However, when the two attacks collided and let out their true power, boundless power affected them too. There was a strong gale that could tear the sky and no one could open their eyes under such strong wind. If there was one who could open his eyes, that'd only be Purple Moon Emperor. Purple Moon Emperor then looked terrified. Too strong, too strong. Merely the power of the peripheral was already so strong, just how strong could the core power be? Purple Moon Emperor muttered. As a great emperor he couldn't see the core scene on the battlefield. However, merely the power of the subsidiary was terrifying enough. He knew that if he were to be in the core of the battlefield with his power, he wouldn't be able to survive under such terrifying power. Virum. A terrifying power lasted for more than a dozen breaths and finally dispersed. The surrounding experts then opened their eyes and looked at the core of the battlefield. At first glance, everyone felt their scalps go numb as though everything was going to explode. On the battlefield, the void covering hundreds of millions of miles disappeared entirely. Everything vanished. There was only boundless darkness and a terrifying black hole that swallowed everything. The black hole was still expanding at a terrifyingly fast speed. Spacetime disappeared? Jian Wushuang muttered. In the expanse hundreds of millions of miles, everything turned into nothing in an exchange of blows. The outcome of the battle between Emperor Bai and the arrogant man in the white robe. Scary. Such terrifying battle power was unbelievable to Jian Wushuang. Maybe only the scene that he was seeing before the huge coffin in the independent space in the 8th layer, the scene of ancient war could compare with its power favorably. Too powerful. The surrounding people exclaimed in surprise. Every one of them was in unprecedented shock. In the expanse that turned into nothing at the location in the middle, there were two figures that towered there. To be able to take one of my strokes, you're not too shabby. The arrogant man in the white robe looked at Emperor Bai but his gaze remained cold. Emperor Bai squinted his eyes but he looked solemn. With one exchange of blows, he obviously could tell how powerful the other party was. Forget about the fact that it was the second era, even if it were the first era, no one would be that powerful. Just like the supreme experts from the first era, Sword Emperor Dugu was known to be the first in sword principle in the first era. However, in Emperor Bai's eyes, even Sword Emperor Dugu at his peak wasn't as scary as the mysterious arrogant man in the white robe in front of him. The first era collapsed many years ago and only I survived. I am much stronger than before. If Sword Emperor Dugu appears in front of me again, I am confident enough to defeat him. However, the person in front of me I am not sure at all. This person. There was a commotion in Emperor Bai's heart. You are Emperor Bai, right? The arrogant man in the white robe's voice rang again. Although you're only of chaotic realm, to explode power far beyond chaotic realm under the circumstance of being restrained, you are qualified to know my name. Listen, my name is Emperor 13. Emperor 13? The mysterious expert's name is Emperor 13? There were countless experts who were impressed and also remembered the name in their hearts. The owner of the name was a super expert that could fight against Emperor Bai directly. Emperor Bai's face was cold but he didn't speak. He had never heard of Emperor 13. He had never heard of it after the First Era. Hence, there was no doubt that Emperor 13 was definitely from ancient times. The secret skill that you just performed, although it was powerful, it is a pity that it isn't complete. I happen to have the complete set of the secret skills. If you want it, I can give it to you, Emperor God 13 said coldly. Emperor Bai's gaze was fixed. Of course, the condition would be that you have to look after this little guy for me for the time being. For no time. 10,000 years at most, Emperor 13 pointed at Jian Wushuang behind him. Sure, Emperor Bai nodded. Then Emperor 13's cold face revealed a faint smile. He then turned and vanished into thin air. This is. Emperor Bai saw and his eyes dilated in shock. It's consciousness embodiment. Chapter 1927 Jian Wushuang and Emperor Bai. Consciousness embodiment. Different from consciousness incarnation. The incarnation was merely made of consciousness but not any other power. It was only consciousness. However, consciousness embodiment had a certain level of fighting power, and one's fighting power would be related to a person's personal power and strength. Emperor Bai knew some experts from ancient times who were extremely powerful would form consciousness embodiment and go on war. However, he never expected that Emperor 13, who he had to go all out to deal with, was merely a consciousness embodiment. His consciousness embodiment was already this powerful. What if he came personally? Experts from ancient times. Emperor Bai clenched his pale fist. The surrounding experts saw that Emperor 13 suddenly disappeared and they were confused. Especially Jian Wushuang. He had no idea why would Emperor 13 suddenly lend him a helping hand. Theoretically, he should have nothing to do with Emperor 13. Previously, he had interrupted the other party in ancient battlefield. Theoretically, even if he were to kill him directly, there wouldn't be any misunderstanding. But in the end, not only would Emperor 13 not kill him, but he also left a mark in his body. When he was in danger, Emperor 13 revealed himself to save him. Not only saving him, Emperor 13 even struck a deal with Emperor Bai to take care of him before he left. It was obvious that only one would do that if they were related. But honestly speaking, Jian Wushuang didn't even know who Emperor 13 was. He only knew that he came from ancient times. Besides that, he knew nothing. Swoosh. Then there was a figure that moved and appeared next to Emperor Bai. Mr. Emperor Bai, Purple Moon Emperor greeted politely. They were both great emperors. However, when Purple Moon Emperor was talking to Emperor Bai, it was like a Sir God or Emperor God speaking to a great emperor. It was very normal. Although Emperor Bai was in Great Emperor realm, his power had surpassed Great Emperor. I just got here and I have no idea about what happened earlier. You tell me, Emperor Bai glanced at Purple Moon Emperor. Yes, Purple Moon Emperor nodded and immediately told him everything he knew briefly. It included how barbaric Abysmal Saint Master was. He didn't care how Purple Moon Emperor stopped him but attacked Jian Wushuang directly. It also included how Abysmal Saint Master had destroyed his consciousness incarnation. Of course, he also told Emperor Bai the scene where the mysterious arrogant man in the white robe, Emperor 13, was defeated Abysmal Saint Master. Is that so? Emperor Bai heard and nodded faintly. Then his pair of white eyes looked around. The war stops here now. Everyone go back to where you come from. Emperor Bai's voice was filled with authority. All the experts at the scene heard and didn't dare to go against his command. They bowed at Emperor Bai politely, one after another, and immediately left. When the two alliances left, there wasn't unwillingness and they were glad. After all, they were already defeated. If they were to continue to fight, Lineage of Star would only massacre them. Just as the experts from the two alliances left. Jian Wushuang, I wanted to make a trip to Lineage of Star. Will you welcome me? Emperor Bai looked at Jian Wushuang. Emperor Bai came personally. You bring radiance to Lineage of Star. How can I refuse? Please, Jian Wushuang wasn't arrogant nor inferior. Under the lead of Jian Wushuang, Emperor Bai and Purple Moon Emperor immediately walked to Lineage of Star. In the middle of Universe Galaxy, in the lair of Lineage of Star where Jian Wushuang resided, Sword Star. In the lofty hall, there were only Jian Wushuang and Emperor Bai. As for the others, including Purple Moon Emperor, they were waiting outside. Jian Wushuang and Emperor Bai were sitting opposite one another while Emperor Bai held a cup of tea and sipped but never spoke. Jian Wushuang looked humble but not fearful. After a while, Emperor Bai finally put down the cup of tea. The pair of strange white eyes looked at Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang, how long have you been in the state of Ultimate Real God? Jian Wushuang was surprised. Ultimate Real God, such a title he had never told anyone. Because Emperor Bai was like him, an inverse cultivator, he knew it naturally. It has already been tens of thousands of years, Jian Wushuang replied. Only tens of thousands of years? Emperor Bai smiled faintly. Back then real god Wu Bei was in ultimate real god stage much longer than you have been. He had been at the peak of ultimate real god stage for a very long time, and during that time he requested to see me so many times and intended to obtain the 7th step of inverse cultivation skill from me. It was a pity that I never wanted to see him. Do you know why? Jian Wushuang shook his head. The 6th step of inverse cultivation skill was given to him by real god Wu Bei. He had once talked to real god Wu Bei as well, and he knew how helpless real god Wu Bei felt. Real god Wu Bei had paid a great price in order to get the 7th step of inverse cultivation skill, but he had never got to see Emperor Bai even once before he died. I was not willing to see him because he was too weak, Emperor Bai replied coldly, although he passed all 3 inverse cultivation tests and also reached the peak of ultimate real god. However, besides his identity, his comprehension towards doctrine and his opportunity to learn secret skill was extremely ordinary. Even if I were to pass him the 7th step of inverse cultivation skill for him to break through and reach almighty level, he would at most possess the fighting power of a great emperor, or maybe even only be at the bottom of one. Because that was his limit. Such fighting power would be too weak. To the entire eternal chaotic world, there would be almost no influence at all. If so, why would I want to see him? Why would I want to pass him the skill? Jian Wushuang was stunned and he was surprised. Real god Wu Bai's comprehension level wasn't high, nor did he have a lot of opportunities. Jian Wushuang knew about that. However, Emperor Bai wasn't willing to pass real god Wu Bei at the 7th step of inverse cultivation skill because he didn't have high potential, which was something Jian Wushuang didn't expect. Real god Wu Bai's talent was ordinary, but you are different. Emperor Bai looked at Jian Wushuang. You are very talented. You are stronger than I am and you are very fortunate. You carried a lot of opportunities on you. Otherwise you wouldn't have countless trump cards and skills. If you were to break through and become an almighty, you could totally achieve something like me, if not become stronger. You would be extremely helpful to eternal chaotic world. Hence, I can give you the 7th step of inverse cultivation skill, but only under one condition. Chapter 1928 Emperor Bai's Condition. Emperor Bai, go ahead. Jian Wushuang was excited. The 7th step of inverse cultivation skill was the crucial factor of him becoming the strongest person in eternal chaotic world. Without the skill, no matter how great his skills and trump cards were, he wouldn't be able to compare with a true great emperor after all. However, with the skill he can then try to break through and become an almighty. By then he could easily reach great emperor level. He might even stand a chance to compare favorably with Emperor Bai. Hence, regardless of the price he had to pay in order to get the 7th step of inverse cultivation skill, he'd do it. Jian Wushuang had already made up his mind. As long as the conditions that Emperor Bai suggested didn't go against his principles, he would figure out a way to get it done no matter how difficult it was. The first condition is that I have to receive the inheritance of secret skill of Star Palace, Emperor Bai said directly. The secret skill of Star Palace, Jian Wushuang stunned. Emperor Bai is also interested in the secret skill of Star Palace? The secret skill is extremely unique. It is also extremely helpful to Great Emperor. Previously I couldn't use it. But now it's different, Emperor Bai said, but he didn't explain much. Jian Wushuang thought for a while and asked, Mr. Emperor Bai, I'd like to clarify if the secret skill of Star Palace is for you alone to cultivate, or Emperor Bai intends to spread the secret skill widely, for the experts from Sanctuary Alliance to cultivate it? Lineage of Star obtained the secret skill of Star Palace relying on your own opportunity. Hence, it belongs to Lineage of Star alone. I wouldn't make Lineage of Star to announce the secret skill to the world. I only wanted to cultivate it myself, Emperor Bai answered. Then there's no problem, Jian Wushuang agreed straight away. The secret skill of Star Palace was the biggest advantage and trump card that the experts and disciples from Lineage of Star had. If it wasn't necessary, Jian Wushuang wouldn't wish to spread the secret skill wide to the point that everyone knew it. Then Lineage of Star would lose their advantage. However, if it was only Emperor Bai alone, there was no difference. Just like guest elders in Lineage of Star, Jian Wushuang promised to let them cultivate the secret skill of Star Palace as well. After this war, the 3 alliances are defeated. Almighty's alliance is even long gone. Lineage of Star could consider yourself a great victory. If I am not mistaken, you would be dealing with the other 2 alliances later on, right? Emperor Bai asked. Yes, Jian Wushuang nodded. No matter if it was Star Extermination Alliance or Supreme 10 Alliance, they came at Lineage of Star with a goal to root us out, especially Star Extermination Alliance. Back on Star Land, They advanced and consolidated at every step to destroy Lineage of Star's foundation. They didn't want to leave Lineage of Star any chance. Now that Lineage of Star has passed through the calamity, I, of course, have to wait until I settle everything before I deal with them. I believe anyone would do the same as I do. You're right. The two alliances took the initiative to attack Lineage of Star, and it is only right and proper that you take revenge on them. However, my second condition is for Lineage of Star to not attack the two alliances for now, Emperor Bai said. What? Jian Wushuang creased his eyebrows. Because the current situation is unusual, Emperor Bai looked. You know clearly that the existence of Sanctuary Alliance is to match against star demons in the 8 layers, hidden forces, Holocaust sect, and also Acheron Palace. The two major dark forces were originally forced to hide in the dark by Sanctuary Alliance. They were like rats on the streets and they didn't date to reveal themselves. Over the years, the two hidden forces started preparing for an attack. Not too long ago, Sanctuary Alliance received news that Holocaust sect went through a drastic change and they were united by someone else ruling with an iron fist. On top of that, the actions of Acheron Palace for the past years. I'm afraid, in no time, eternal chaotic world will be in chaos again. Sanctuary Alliance might come across a tragic war. At such a crucial moment, Sanctuary Alliance naturally has to figure out a way to maintain our power. Emperor Bai paused and continued. This time, the war between the 3 alliances and Lineage of Star, no one expected Lineage of Star to win a great victory. You even broke Star Extermination Alliance apart and made Almighty's alliance vanish into thin air. After this war, Almighties who passed away were more than 150 of them. To Sanctuary Alliance, it is a great loss. If both parties were to continue, it would only expend more of Sanctuary Alliance's fighting power. While an oyster and a kingfisher were engaged in a bitter tussle, a fisherman came along and carried them both off. In other words, the two dark forces benefit from it. Emperor Bai, I understand what you mean, Jian Wushuang's voice was deep, but the war isn't instigated by Lineage of Star. We are being taunted and bullied. Now that we finally passed the calamity and stand a chance to counterattack, you want Lineage of Star to hold back? Jian Wushuang was unwilling. Not just him, but all experts in Lineage of Star were also aggrieved. They were only waiting for Jian Wushuang's command until they counterattacked the two alliances. If Jian Wushuang were to tell them to stop the war, then there might be a lot of people who were unhappy. I know that Lineage of Star is upset, but the current situation didn't allow you to continue the war. On top of that, although both alliances lost many experts in the war, their foundation is still solid. If they continued to work together, their fighting power would still be magnificent. If Lineage of Star were to leave the Galaxy Formation and enter their lairs to fight, the match would be hard to call. In the end, both parties might be in a stalemate situation. Sanctuary Alliance wouldn't allow that. I brought up the condition in order to provide Lineage of Star an opportunity to step out from a difficult position. You can announce to the outside world that you and I reached a mutual agreement that you have to stop for now. If Sanctuary Alliance were to get involved, it wouldn't be taken care of so easily, Emperor Bai said. Jian Wushuang's face grew in distress. He also knew Sanctuary Alliance's concern. If it was an ordinary period, it wouldn't matter if Lineage of Star were to continue to fight against the two alliances. Sanctuary Alliance wouldn't be bothered. But it was different then. Jian Wushuang, you actually really didn't have to continue the war. Even if you were to continue to fight, there wouldn't be any other result. You should know that there are some forces among the two alliances that have deep-rooted foundations. Some are even associated with the higher-ups in Sanctuary Alliance. For instance, Abysmal Palace has Abysmal Saint Master as their backer. Soaring Heaven King Palace also has Colored Glaze Emperor to lead for them. With great emperors involved, Lineage of Star can't destroy them. You might as well take the time to increase your power. After some time, when eternal chaotic world finally settles down, I reckon you should be an almighty by then and your power should be able to compare favorably with a great emperor's or even with mine. By then, it'd be much easier if you wanted to destroy the two alliances and Sanctuary Alliance definitely wouldn't say much, Emperor Bai said. Chapter 1929 Friendly? Hearing what Emperor Bai said, Jian Wushuang nodded faintly. He felt that Emperor Bai was right. Although Lineage of Star had won a great victory in the war, the two alliances would still possess fierce power if they were to reconstruct their teams. If Lineage of Star were to fight against the two alliances outside the Galaxy Formation, Lineage of Star really wouldn't stand much chance. As for destroying the major forces, it really was impossible. Emperor Bai, I promise you that Lineage of Star will not find trouble with the two alliances for now. However, if the two alliances were to find trouble with us, you couldn't blame me for that, Jian Wushuang said. Don't worry. As long as the two alliances aren't dumb, they should know what to do. Plus, Sanctuary Alliance will definitely send great emperors to give them warning personally, Emperor Bai said with a smile. Emperor Bai paused and continued, the last condition, I'd like to know where did Emperor 13 come from and how is he related to you? Emperor 13? Jian Wushuang was stunned, then he flashed a bitter smile. Emperor Bai, to be frank with you, Emperor 13 and I merely met once and we are not related to each other at all. However, when we first met, I'm not sure why, but he left a mark in my body. This time, when I am in danger, he rushed over to me via the mark. As for his origins and why he helped me, I really have no idea. Jian Wushuang was stating the truth. He really didn't know anything about Emperor 13. The only thing that he knew was that Emperor 13 was an ancient expert and he was from the ancient battlefield in his hometown. However, he would definitely not tell Emperor Bai about the ancient battlefield located in his hometown. I see, Emperor Bai creased his eyebrows. Emperor 13 is definitely a super expert from ancient times. He would save you and urge me to take care of you. It meant that he was related to you, but you have no idea why. Forget it. Ancient time was a secret to begin with. The ancient experts were mysterious. Emperor Bai smiled faintly. From his reply, it was obvious that he had once met an ancient expert and probably more than one. Jian Wushuang, as you agreed with all the conditions that I brought up, I shall give you the 7th step of inverse cultivation skill. Emperor Bai said as he flipped his hand and took out a gray bead. Jian Wushuang's heart quivered at the sight of the gray bead. He was very familiar with the gray bead. From the beginning of cultivation skill until every step of inverse cultivation skill, they were all contained in a gray bead. The gray bead was extremely mysterious and Jian Wushuang had yet to find out what mysterious raw material the gray bead made of. The 7th step of inverse cultivation skill is in the bead. Take a look. Emperor Bai passed the gray bead to Jian Wushuang directly. Jian Wushuang took it and briefly went through it. He was thrilled. He knew that it was really the 7th step of the inverse cultivation skill. Thank you, Emperor Bai, Jian Wushuang quickly thanked. You're welcome, Emperor Bai waved his hand. Emperor Bai, let me bring you to Lineage of Stars Scripture Depository to accept the inheritance of secret skill of Star Palace, Jian Wushuang said. All right, Emperor Bai nodded. Under Jian Wushuang's lead, Emperor Bai arrived at Scripture Depository and started receiving the inheritance of secret skill of Star Palace. Very soon, Emperor Bai walked out from Scripture Depository after inheritance had been completed. Emperor Bai, how did it go? Jian Wushuang asked with a smile. Secret skill of Star Palace is unfathomable. Although I received all 3 volumes, I'm afraid I could only cultivate the first volume, Emperor Bai smiled faintly. Emperor Bai could only cultivate the first volume as well? Jian Wushuang was surprised. It was as though everyone found it difficult to cultivate the secret skill of Star Palace. Most of them could only cultivate the first volume. Some couldn't even cultivate the first volume after they received the inheritance. As for the Master of Star Palace, he absorbed a drop of blood essence that belonged to an expert of 7-star Black Sect by chance. Hence, he successfully cultivated the 2nd volume. However, Jian Wushuang didn't find the secret skill difficult. When he cultivated it, it could be considered smooth sailing. He had even cultivated the 3rd volume. It inevitably made Jian Wushuang felt surprised. After Emperor Bai had received the inheritance, he didn't stay back any longer. In the galaxy, the experts from Lineage of Star, led by Jian Wushuang, came to farewell Emperor Bai. Jian Wushuang, this is my communication token. If you come across any problem in the future, you can send me a message. Emperor Bai gave Jian Wushuang his communication token before he left. The surrounding experts were surprised at the sight. Especially Purple Moon Emperor, he felt a complicated feeling and he was looking at Jian Wushuang in jealousy. One should know that Emperor Bai was the strongest person in Sanctuary Alliance and he was always aloof and set himself high. The experts from Sanctuary Alliance, including the Great Emperors, only 2 or 3 of them had his communication token. Great Emperors on the bottom of the level like Purple Moon Emperor, never once had it. If he were to be looking for Emperor Bai, he had to look for someone to pass the message. But then Jian Wushuang had received Emperor Bai's communication token. Plus, Emperor Bai was normally cold to others, even to Great Emperors. However, he was extremely friendly to Jian Wushuang. Purple Moon Emperor was even more confused. After Emperor Bai left, Purple Moon Emperor immediately came forward. Jian Wushuang, congratulations. Emperor Bai's communication token, even I don't have it. Purple Moon Emperor smiled and his attitude was entirely different from before. When he had been talking to Jian Wushuang earlier, he had referred to himself with an honorable pronoun. Then he had only referred to himself as I. Purple Moon Emperor, you must be joking. I'm only lucky. Plus, Emperor Bai seems to be an easy person to talk to. Jian Wushuang smiled. An easy person? Purple Moon Emperor smiled awkwardly. Jian Wushuang really found Emperor Bai friendly and easy to talk to. At least, during their conversation earlier, Emperor Bai didn't put on bureaucratic airs, nor did he impose anything on him. For instance, Emperor Bai could make Lineage of Star hand him the secret skill of Star Palace with one order. For Lineage of Star and the two alliances to stop the war, it could also be only ordered by Emperor Bai. However, Emperor Bai didn't force the order but traded with him for the 7th step of inverse cultivation skill. Even when he told Jian Wushuang to stop Lineage of Star from fighting with the two alliances, he weighed the pros and cons on Jian Wushuang's behalf and let Jian Wushuang make the final decision. Then, Emperor Bai took the initiative to give him his communication token. Even Jian Wushuang was surprised himself. Could it be because Emperor 13 wanted Emperor Bai to take care of me, and that's why Emperor Bai is gentle to me? Jian Wushuang was confused. That's not right. Although Emperor 13 is powerful, there's no need to curry favor with me, right? Chapter 1930 in Peace. Although Jian Wushuang was confused, he didn't bother to think about it further. Sword Emperor, everything is settled and I shall bid you farewell, Purple Moon Emperor said. Thank you, Great Emperor, for helping. Jian Wushuang and Lineage of Star will remember this. Jian Wushuang expressed his gratitude. Haha, don't mention it. Purple Moon Emperor let out a hearty laugh, then he turned to leave. As for Qian Mingzi, he naturally followed Purple Moon Emperor. Hall Master Yuan. Jian Wushuang looked at Hall Master Yuan by the side. Send down an order. Tell the experts of Lineage of Star to take back Star Land. Yes, Hall Master Yuan nodded. Palace Master, how about the two alliances? Hall Master Jian asked. The two alliances retreated and the war has ended for now, Jian Wushuang answered. Ended? We are letting the two alliances off the hook just like that? Hall Master Jian's eyebrows were tightly knitted and there was obviously reluctance in their eyes. Hall Master Yuan and Hall Master Guxian were upset too. Although Lineage of Star had won a great victory in the war, the two alliances weren't wiped off. Could it be because of Sanctuary Alliance? Hall Master Yuan turned to look at Jian Wushuang. Not only because of Sanctuary Alliance, but also because Eternal Chaotic World isn't peaceful for a while, Jian Wushuang said calmly. I have already reached a mutual agreement with Emperor Bai. Lineage of Star will stop fighting with the two alliances for now. After some time, when Eternal Chaotic World regains its stability, we will fight with them again. I understand, Hall Master Yuan nodded. Go ahead, Jian Wushuang waved. Although the two alliances aren't wiped out, Lineage of Star has survived the war and our danger has been resolved. The skies clear up after a storm. After this war, Lineage of Star will reach a brand new level after all. Most importantly, from today, there won't be anyone in Eternal Chaotic World who dares to cast greedy eyes over the secret skill of Star Palace in Lineage of Star. Lineage of Star will truly be in peace now. Sanctuary Alliance and all forces in Eternal Chaotic World had been watching after Lineage of Star and the three alliances. On the day when the three alliances finally fought with Lineage of Star. At first, almost everyone was certain that Lineage of Star would be destroyed and wiped out, without a chance to struggle. However, when the end result was announced, everyone found it unbelievable. The three alliances had been defeated. They were crushed. Star Extermination Alliance, who had attacked first, were defeated by Lineage of Star. There were almost 70 Almighties of them, but only less than 20 survived in the end. Supreme 10 Alliance did slightly better. Although quite a number of their Almighties were killed in the process of running away, it was much better compared to Star Extermination Alliance. The most tragic one would be Almighty's Alliance. Almighty's Alliance, that was made of more than 100 Almighties, should be the strongest among all three alliances. But in the end, Almighty's Alliance vanished into thin air. All experts had died and not one survived. Unbelievable. The result was entirely beyond one's expectation. Even the great emperors in Sanctuary Alliance didn't expect it would be so. Of course, the process of the war was gradually announced. Lineage of Star displayed their terrifying power and the true power of Universe Galaxy. Especially Jian Wushuang's shocking stroke. One stroke destroyed the entire Almighty's Alliance? Is that a joke? Hundreds of Almighties were massacred by Sword Emperor's one stroke. That's too scary. Sword Emperor is so scary. He's simply a demon. Countless people were astonished. They yielded because of the terrifying stroke that Jian Wushuang had revealed. Then Great Emperor came personally to wipe out everything. Just as Jian Wushuang was in a desperate situation, a mysterious expert suddenly took action. With one glance the boundless darkness dispersed. One stroke and it shattered Abysmal Saint Master's defense armor, which led to severe injury of Abysmal Saint Master. If it wasn't because Abysmal Saint Master wasn't qualified enough, he would be long dead in the person's hands. Then, Emperor Bai came personally and had an exchange of blows with the mysterious expert. Hundreds of millions of miles vanished. Such a terrifying scene struck fear into everyone. No one expected that the war that was originally suppressed, the war that had no suspense, suddenly had such a drastic change from nowhere. But, regardless of the process, the result was confirmed. After the war, everyone understood that there was no one in eternal chaotic world that could pose a threat to lineage of Star. The people who harbored deep-seated resentment and cast greedy eyes over secret skill of Star Palace, no matter how great their resentment or their greed was, they wouldn't dare to attack lineage of Star. Just like the two remaining alliances, they immediately retreated to their old lair after the war and didn't dare to attack lineage of Star again. Such a scene reminded people of Master of Star Palace's massacre when he was cornered by various forces many years ago. Back then, because of the Master of Star Palace's massacre, the forces in eternal chaotic world had been deterred. As long as the Master of Star Palace was alive, there were no forces who dared to attack lineage of Star. But then, the war played an even greater deterrent force to eternal chaotic world. Not only were there more experts that had passed away but also because of the terrifying stroke that Jian Wushuang performed. Most importantly, even when a great emperor attacked, Abysmal Saint Master, who was a great emperor in third place, left with a severe injury. Who would have the guts to move lineage of Star? Just as all forces were still astonished, the higher-ups in Sanctuary Alliance showed the changed on Heaven and Earth Supreme Ranking list. On Heaven and Earth Supreme Ranking list, there was no change for the top 15 great emperors. Everyone knew about the mysterious expert that had appeared in the war, Emperor 13. However, because Emperor 13 was too mysterious and his background was too unique, even though he was on par with Emperor Bai or even more powerful than Emperor Bai, he wasn't listed on Heaven and Earth Supreme Ranking list. On the contrary, the ranking below the great emperors were drastic. There was no choice. There were too many experts that had died in the war in Universe Galaxy. There were many emperor gods from Almighty's alliance that were killed by Jian Wushuang. Hence, the change was drastic. Then, the ranking below Great Emperor on Heaven and Earth Supreme Ranking list was as such. The 16th place on Heaven and Earth Supreme Ranking list was still Underworld God. There was no doubt about it. Even though, regardless of if it were Jian Yi or Emperor God Tianling, they had displayed fighting power that could be compared to Underworld God favorably, they had never fought after all. On top of that, Underworld God was widely acknowledged previously. If there wasn't any battle achievement, it wouldn't change Underworld God's ranking. The 17th place on Heaven and Earth Supreme Ranking list was Jian Wushuang. Chapter 1931. All parties searched. Jian Wushuang, Sword Emperor, the 17th place on Heaven and Earth Supreme Ranking list. He was second to Underworld God. When it was announced, even Jian Wushuang was surprised. One should know that although he was powerful, it was a little forceful to say that he was second to Underworld God among Emperor Gods. Forget about the others, Jian Yi and Emperor God Tianling were already stronger than him. Plus, the boatman in black that Jian Wushuang had met on the way back from Emperor Sword Sect was also stronger than him. I'd like to see why the higher-ups in Sanctuary Alliance arranged themselves as such, Jian Wushuang muttered and continued to read. Sword Emperor once performed a shocking stroke and killed over 100 Almighties from Almighty's alliance. No one below Great Emperor rank could withstand the power of the one stroke. After the display of the shocking stroke, he was cornered by Abysmal Saint Master. At that crucial moment, he gave his all and launched a hit that could be compared favorably to a great emperor's. His trump cards were impressive. Plus, before he used any trump cards, he once fought against 3 peak emperor gods alone and he had the upper hand. On top of that, he soul-controlled an expert with immeasurable skill, Jian Yi. With everything mentioned above, it is determined that Jian Wushuang's overall power could challenge an Underworld Gods. The moment he launches his trump card, even Underworld God will have to move away. Hence his ranking on the 17th place on Heaven and Earth Supreme Ranking list. On the brand new Heaven and Earth Supreme Ranking list, the reason why Jian Wushuang was on that ranking was listed clearly. Hence, no one had the guts to doubt him. Even there were some who thought the higher-ups of Sanctuary Alliance had ranked Jian Wushuang too low. He should be above Underworld God. After all, Even underworld gods had to avoid if they were to come across an Almighty's alliance that was made of over 100 Almighties. However, Jian Wushuang wielded his sword and killed everyone with one stroke. The terrifying stroke made everyone yield. Naturally, no one had any opinion about the ranking. It was Jian Wushuang himself who felt sheepish. Because he had performed the terrifying stroke by putting the third volume of Secret Skill of Star Palace to play all together. The third volume of Secret Skill of Star Palace wasn't easy to perform. After performing it once, it would require a long time until he could perform it the second time. Putting the third volume of Secret Skill of Star Palace aside, he reckoned his other trump cards wouldn't enable him to match Underworld God evenly. However, it wasn't false that Jian was soul-controlled. Soul control was considered one of his skills as well. If he were to fight alongside Jian, he might stand a chance to pose a threat to Underworld God. After all, Jian was an expert from ancient times. After he revealed his terrifying fighting power in Universe Galaxy, the higher-ups in Sanctuary Alliance had already listed him on the 18th place on Heaven and Earth Supreme Ranking list, just below Jian Wushuang. After Jian, it was followed by Emperor God Tianling. That was normal. Those who partook in that way knew that Emperor God Tianling gave his all when he had fought with Jian, but in the end Jian had the upper hand. It was obvious that Jian was slightly stronger than Emperor God Tianling. The ranking among the top few peak Emperor gods changed, and the ranking of the other peak Emperor gods and ordinary Emperor gods was even higher. However, Jian Wushuang merely went through it simply but didn't bother much. He broke 7 stars in the earlier battle and the power of ancient tribe bloodline was exhausted. He would require time to slowly recover. King of Venomous Worms, for the rest of this time, it'll have to depend on you, Jian Wushuang smiled. I'll try my best, King of Venomous Worms replied. The current King of Venomous Worms found it hard to assist Jian Wushuang in fighting his enemies on the level of peak Emperor God. However, his recovery power had still played a major factor. His recovery power was Jian Wushuang's biggest reliance. In boundless darkness, in the void that had no light, there was a dark palace floating. In the depth of the dark palace, on a lofty throne, there was a figure in a black robe that slowly appeared. The figure in the black robe had a pale face and his aura was spiritless. It was Abysmal Saint Master. There was armor floating in front of Abysmal Saint Master. However, it was obvious that the armor was forcefully put together by shattered pieces. No way, forget about putting them back together. Even if I were to refine it entirely, the power of the Amor would be diminished greatly. D***MN. Abysmal Saint Master clenched his hand and there was billowing hatred in his eyes. He had paid a great price to get the armor from ancient Mystery Land, but it had broken apart straight away. Emperor 13. D***MN Emperor 13. Just you wait. I can't do anything about you now, but it is only a matter of time until I peel your skin and break your bones. I'll let you know that letting me go is a great mistake. Not only you but also Emperor Bai and Jian Wushuang. One day I will step on all of you. I definitely will. Abysmal Saint Master roared in madness. As his bellows spread, there were a few flames that soared into the air in darkness. In the huge estate that looked like a human paradise. On the calm river, a boat was drifting casually. On the boat, there was a lazy man in a purple robe fishing with his bamboo rod. At the same time, he was listening to the report of a beautiful woman in a purple robe behind him. Master, this is news from Lineage of Star, the beautiful woman in a purple robe said politely. They are defeated? The lazy man looked surprised. Abysmal took action himself but didn't get to kill Jian Wushuang? Abysmal is such rubbish. It wasn't because Abysmal Saint Master was not powerful. The crucial part is that a mysterious expert, Emperor 13, helped Jian Wushuang and he was too powerful. Abysmal Saint Master couldn't even take one stroke. Even when Emperor Bai attacked, he didn't manage to score before the mysterious expert. If I'm not mistaken, Emperor 13 should be an expert from ancient times, the beautiful woman in the purple robe said. An expert from ancient times? The lazy man was surprised. As it involves ancient times, it isn't something I can take care of. Report this to Demon King. He might know the origins of Emperor 13. Then the lazy man continued to fish. The beautiful woman in the purple robe nodded and disappeared from the boat. In the darkest place in eternal chaotic world, Gugu, there was a large amount of black river water that covered the entire universe. The river was like the Netherland. The black river water was like the water in the Netherland. This was the core of Acheron Palace. In the middle of the boundless netherworld, there was a floating island and there was a pavilion towering on the island. In the depths there was a pitch-black tower. The tower was huge but there was only one level. Chapter 1932 The number 1 force in Sanctuary Alliance. In the tower there was a huge bronze statue towering. The bronze statue was over 1,000 zhang tall and he was wearing a bronze mask. He had a total of 8 hands and the 8 hands were holding various weapons tightly. In front of the green bronze statue, it happened to be a figure in white robe knelt there politely. He had been kneeling there for 6 hours. Finally there was a faint change in the bronze statue. On top of the statue, the only place the mask didn't cover was a pair of eyes and they slowly looked down. I should say this before. If there isn't anything important, don't disturb me, a deep, old voice reverberated in the tower. Demon King, there is a mysterious expert in eternal chaotic world. He should be like you, he's also from ancient times. His name is Emperor 13, the person in a white robe was still kneeling politely. Oh, Emperor 13? He humphed, is there a mirror image of how he fought? There is, the white-robed person waved and immediately there was a mirror image that appeared in the tower. In the mirror image, Emperor 13 attacked and defeated Abysmal Saint Master with ease. Then there was a scene when Emperor Bai fought. When he watched the scenes in the mirror image, the pair of eyes on the top of the bronze statue dilated in shock. It's him? An old voice asked with a tinge of shock. Demon King knew this person? The person in white robe couldn't help but ask. Yeah, of course I do. Emperor 13? Ah, it's a great name. But that's not right. It should be his name before he got famous or a name that he gave himself when he wandered outside. The ancient voice resounded smilingly. This person is a big figure. A shocking figure. There were countless experts that partook in the life-destroying war back then. There were many that possessed great skills. Among the countless experts that partook in the war, this person's power could be in the top 5. What? The person who was kneeling down suddenly lifted her head and revealed an enchanting lattice appearance. Then there was shock in her beautiful eyes. Top 5? In the ancient times war, his power could be in the top 5? So, wouldn't he be stronger than you? Of course he was stronger than I am. During the war back then, I had to avoid him when I saw him. Otherwise, my life would be threatened. However, that was back then. I am different now. The power in this universe is restricted greatly. My power couldn't be played and it would be the same for him. Even if I were to fight against him, I would not be afraid. The bronze statue's voice sounded confident. The beautiful woman in the white robe then let out a breath of relief. As he is awake, the others should wake up soon. Ah, it has been so many years and it is finally here. Ah, I am quite excited. I wish that it could be ended completely this time. Go and get ready. Ha ha. The bronze statue's hysterical laughter reverberated in the entire tower. The beautiful woman in the white robe bowed politely and walked out of the tower. In the darkness, all forces surged but Lineage of Star was at peace. Sanctuary Alliance came forth to mediate. The war between Lineage of Star and the two alliances couldn't continue. The rest of the time Lineage of Star naturally needed to rebuild Starland. In the blink of an eye, 300 years had passed. In the 300 years, Lineage of Star had not only reconquered Starland, their power had also continued to expand. They had already covered a few lands and they had the power to influence in Purple Moon Sanctuary. As within Sanctuary Alliance, although it had only been 300 years, Lineage of Star had already advanced and leaped to become a major force in Sanctuary Alliance. There was no doubt that no other force in Sanctuary Alliance could compare to the power that Lineage of Star possessed favorably. Lineage of Star had more say in Sanctuary Alliance than before too. Even the great emperors in Sanctuary Alliance had scruples with Lineage of Star. Firstly, they had received news that Jian Wushuang had already obtained the 7th step of inverse cultivation skill from Emperor Bai. It was only a matter of time until he would break through and become an almighty. Then he would be on par with them or even be above them. Secondly, they also knew that there was a terrifying super expert backing Jian Wushuang who could compare to Emperor Bai favorably, Emperor 13. Because of these two reasons, the great emperors of course had to take it easy. As long as Lineage of Star was not behaving wildly, they had to turn a blind eye and not bother with them. The tide rises, the boat floats. Lineage of Star naturally changed with an upward trend as well. In a lofty hall, the higher-ups of Lineage of Star gathered there to have a discussion. The one leading was, of course, Jian Wushuang, followed by the 3 hall masters and deacon elders who were on real god level. As for guest elders, they were only guests. They wouldn't be involved with Lineage of Star's affairs on a normal basis. Palace Master, we have just received news that a disciple of Lineage of Star had a brush with a disciple of real martial art Divine Church when he was wandering in Dragonfire Land on East Royal Sanctuary. Both parties fought. At first, the disciple of Lineage of Star had the upper hand. In the end, a real god from Real Martial Art Divine Church took action personally and injured our disciple badly, Hall Master Yuan said calmly. Hearing what Hall Master Yuan had said, the surrounding deacon elders looked at Hall Master Yuan with a strange look. Fighting between disciples and suffering some losses were minor matters. Minor matters that not worth mentioning. In a normal situation, Hall Master Yuan could command any one of the deacon elders to take care of it. However, at the higher-ups meeting, Hall Master Yuan had brought up something so petty and reported to Jian Wushuang. What was he trying to do? Just as the deacon elders were extremely confused, Jian Wushuang on the throne suddenly slammed the table and stood up. There was soaring anger in his eyes. Real Martial Art Divine Church? Humph, the master of Real Martial Art Divine Church has already died and they are behaving so arrogantly. How dare they bully our disciples in Lineage of Star? They have guts. Xiao. Jian Wushuang overlooked. Master. He Xiao, who was already a deacon elder in Lineage of Star, immediately stood up. Although Real Martial Arts Divine Church was in East Royal Sanctuary, Dragonfire Land isn't their territory. They merely have a few branches there. You bring 4 Dao soldiers and make a trip there. Wipe out the 2 branches of Real Martial Arts Divine Church in Dragonfire Land. I will let Emperor God Jian hide in the dark. If the Almighties from Real Martial Arts Divine Church dare to make an appearance, eliminate them all at once. Chapter 1933 The Promise? Jian Wushuang was raging with anger. Yes. He Xn immediately took his order. The deacon elders in the hall exchanged a look and they were shocked. It was merely fought among the disciples and their disciples had suffered a minor loss. It was a trivial matter. But in the end, Jian Wushuang ordered He Xn to bring 4 Dao soldiers and wipe out the 2 branches of Real Martial Art Divine Church. It was obvious that he had made a mountain out of a molehill. However, when they saw the cold expressions of the 3 hall masters, they immediately understood. It was obvious that Jian Wushuang and the other 3 hall masters had intentionally made a mountain out of a molehill. They also understood the reason behind it. Real Martial Art Divine Church was one of the 5 forces in Star Extermination Alliance. They had nearly cornered Lineage of Star to death. Even though because of Sanctuary Alliance, Lineage of Star had agreed to stop meddling with the 2 alliances, the hatred was still there. Lineage of Star definitely had the upper hand. Even though he couldn't start a war, he had seized the chance to take revenge. For instance, it was just a trivial matter but it was enough to become Lineage of Star's excuse. They wanted to look for an opportunity to deal with Real Martial Art Divine Church. They weren't afraid that Real Martial Art Divine Church would take revenge either. They even wished for Real Martial Art Divine Church to counterattack. The moment Real Martial Art Divine Church counterattacked or they had the guts to take revenge, Lineage of Star had no scruples and would pound at them. By then, even Sanctuary Alliance couldn't say much. As for what happened next, He Xiao rushed to Dragonfire Land in East Royal Sanctuary and wiped out the 2 branches of Real Martial Art Divine Church with thunderous measures. After that, He Xian intentionally stayed back in Dragonfire Land for a while as Jian Wushuang instructed. He waited for Real Martial Art Divine Church to find trouble in him. However, Real Martial Art Divine Church knew Lineage of Star's goal. Not only didn't they counterattack, they also apologized to Lineage of Star. Then it ended. The forces in Sanctuary Alliance found out about it and sighed. Everyone could tell that Lineage of Star was making a mountain out of a molehill. They had intentionally picked on them. Plus, Lineage of Star had even wiped out the 2 branches of Real Martial Art Divine Church and killed many disciples of Real Martial Art Divine Church. But in the end, it was the master of Real Martial Art Divine Church who apologized. Sigh, they are not as powerful. It was merely a fight among the juniors. Isn't Lineage of Star behaving too barbarically? Barbaric? Are you dumb? Lineage of Star isn't dumb but that derived from resentment. To your enemy, who is willing to let the opportunity slip. I think Lineage of Star isn't overboard. If I were him, I'd definitely do the same. Yeah, Lineage of Star is only barbaric to the forces from the 2 alliances. To forces and experts that share no resentment, they are rather peaceful. The Real Martial Art Divine Church asked for it as well. The forces from the 2 alliances, besides Abysmal Palace that has a great emperor attending garrison duty, which other forces aren't worried about Lineage of Star. Real Martial Art Divine Church bullied the junior by sending a real god expert to attack the universe god disciple of Lineage of Star personally. Isn't this courting death? All of the forces in Sanctuary Alliance was laughing about it. In the end, no one thought Lineage of Star was behaving ridiculously, but on the contrary, they found it right and proper. As for the barbaric stories of Lineage of Star, it was obviously unbelievable. After all, Lineage of Star was only barbaric towards the other enemies. Once they had found an opportunity or excuse, they would pound without hesitation. To the other forces and sects they were peaceful. Both parties would sit down and talk about it if it were a trivial matter. In the blink of an eye, 200 years had passed. Lineage of Star had finally settled down. The forces that formed the two alliances back then had seen what had happened to the real martial art Divine Church, and they had learned their lesson. They held scruples with Lineage of Star. When they had come across any expert or disciple from Lineage of Star, they'd hide far away. If they were to cross paths, they'd hold back as much as they could and not let Lineage of Star stand any chance to take revenge. Then Jian Wushuang had already left Lineage of Star and arrived at an ordinary Holy Kingdom. The name of the Holy Kingdom was Holy Kingdom of Demon Heart. The ancient silver spaceship shuttled through the dark void. In no time there was a floating land. There's the old lair of Holy Kingdom of Demon Heart? Jian Wushuang squinted his eyes. The king of Holy Kingdom of Demon Heart was a Sir God expert that was powerful. Of course, a Sir God was nothing before Jian Wushuang. The purpose of Jian Wushuang's trip was to kill him. In the dim, secret room, there was a scrawny elder in black. He was cultivating. He was King Demon Heart. He was also the king of Holy Kingdom of Demon Heart. Over the years, he had ruled the surrounding holy kingdoms and he had a powerful background. Hence, he could march over eternal chaotic world unhindered. There was almost no one who dared to provoke him. He could be said to be a very relaxed and powerful figure. In his name there was the word, demon. His disposition was naturally very vicious. Legend said that the surrounding dozens of holy kingdoms would send a bunch of beautiful ladies to his old lair, and they were all virgins. At least thousands of people, and at most tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands of people. But there was no one who walked out from his old lair. One day, Virum. There was a sudden shake of prohibition that covered the secret room. Ha! King Demon Heart, who was sitting there with his eyes closed, suddenly opened his eyes. Who is it? King Demon Heart's voice reverberated in the secret room. Swoosh. There was a figure that appeared in front of him from nowhere. Real God. King Demon Heart was surprised and he already knew who the incomer was. I see. Sword Emperor came personally. Greetings. King Demon Heart bowed slightly at Jian Wushuang. Then he smiled and said, Sword Emperor came today. I wonder what you have in mind. Whatever I can do, I'll do it for you. I came here today for one person and also for a promise back then, Jian Wushuang said coldly. A person? Promise? King Demon Heart was confused. Real God Wu Bei. I wonder, does King Demon Heart remember him? Jian Wushuang said. Wu Bei. King Demon Heart's face instantly changed and he could instantly guess the purpose of Jian Wushuang's visit. The sixth step of inverse cultivation skill was obtained from real God Wu Bei. Back then, I promised him that I would kill you on his behalf when I had the power to. Today, I came to carry out my promise. Jian Wushuang's eyes were glistening as he raised his right hand. Sword Emperor, I am Great Emperor Zizus man. Great Emperor Zisu owes me a favor, King Demon Heart said. Oh yeah. Jian Wushuang's voice was cold, but there was no pause in his actions. He knew about King Demon Heart's background. As he dared to attack that day, he naturally had no scruples. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.